lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid.
He's gone, he's hit him, he's straight off at the chase.
And a half-second lead. Oh, with the sizzling car in the background.
He has it. Oh, he's round on the last lap.
There's a massive accident.
Next to the inside, what a move, what a move.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to round 15 of Automobilista Australia's Super 2 series for 2019. This is it, the last round, whatever way you want to call this. Grand Final, last race, La Grande Finale, as they say in Europe. It doesn't make a difference. It will not be a successful season unless you go home champion. And over the course of the last 14 rounds, we have whittled it down to just two. Teammates, in fact. Brenton Foley, car number one, reigning champion from last year. Then his teammate alongside him, Phil Boak. He's still got a lot of work to do. He led this championship for most of it, and he trails by 189 points with 300 left on the table. More about all those championship permutations in just a moment. But first and foremost, a big welcome to all of you and a big thank you for supporting us over the course of the season and all the various commentators that come along with it. As per usual, my name is Steve DeVries, aka Nether, and great to welcome back into the box for the final time this year, but also admirably substituting in on the odd occasion this season for the ever-popular Hans Brunswick. It's great to welcome Michael Zalavari back into commentary. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Nether. Good evening, everyone. Yes, thank you again for having me back. And I'm really excited to be a part of what is the finale for this season of Super 2.
Yeah, it's been a pretty competitive year. We've seen a lot of things happen. We've seen some great race winning streaks. We've seen come from behind effectively from Brenton Foley. He was down and he was on the canvas after the first couple of races and fought his way back to take over control of the Super 2 Championship from the Bathurst round onwards, and he continues to lead the way basically. He's just got to keep it on the black stuff tonight, and he will be defending his Super 2 title from last year.
Yeah, what I've noticed just looking at the Super 2 points over the year is that Foley's wins have come in big clumps, and he's really taken control of the championship, as you mentioned, with this last big clump of wins. The last three rounds of the series, Stuttgart, Bathurst, and Sydney, all with the big one next to Brenton Foley's name. So yeah, 207-point lead heading to this final round, and only his teammate to beat for him to go back-to-back.
That's exactly right. Well, let's have a look at those driver points you were just alluding to. This is how the point standings are coming into the race weekend. So there it is at the very top. So 9 wins for Foley, and he heads the list by some considerable margin. You have a look at all the lists there. There was there was more than that. I think Foley's actually up to 10 wins. I think the graphic might be slightly old. But nonetheless, he has dominated in terms of the win count this year. The only other people who have gotten close were Phil Boak, who's got 3 wins to his name, JP Curio, who is not on that graphic, who had a nice clump of 3 wins in a row around the Winton and area, and he's no longer part of the series. And then Will Devonish, the only other multiple race winner. He was the last winner out at Sandown. And then Mitch Hathaway and Brendan Ross, and also Aldo Benedetti, the only other wins on the season that on that graphic there as well. Aldo Benedetti, not enough points to be on the top 12 there. But as we said, it comes down to just the top 2, the PBF Race Engineering teammates, separated by 189 points coming into tonight's proceedings. And then there's still some good scraps going on a bit further down the order. So Termo and Mitch Hathaway, they're not separated by very much. So if you look on the graphic there, you see it's only 63 points separating the pair of them. So they're both in the server tonight. Mitch Hathaway's ironically at the moment is the fastest man at the moment. And looking down to see where Termo is, he's currently about 1.3 seconds slower in ninth. So that'll be a nice battle to go down to the wire. Top Pro-Am runners, which we haven't really made mention of the Pro-Am runners quite at all during the season. Cam Rutledge and Steve Burko. So they are the 2 Pro-Am runners that are top of the pops in the standings there, 6th and 7th place respectively. Those two are separated by 138 So not much in that one at all either. And depending on where they finish, or a couple of DNFs tonight, they might very well be in contention to swap places throughout the course of the season. And then the other two that are in the Pro-Am category, Billy Dougal-Salonga and Josh Ben, they're down at the bottom of that top 12 graphic there. And there have been a couple of drivers that are just outside the top 12 there, worth giving mention to. Brownie for Cracker Racing Team, he's just chalked up 1,000 points, but he had a couple of good solid results. We haven't seen him since the Sydney Motorsport Park Round where he finished 12th. And then a couple of other guys, Glenn Miles, Ben Rhodes, Zach Ross, they've done some of the season, but not all of it, but they are just off the points graphic there as well. But Fuddy, you mentioned we take a look at Brenton Foley and his wins all coming in big clumps, and you're certainly right. He seems to have gotten his skates on and managed to chalk up 2 or 3 wins in a row, and that's where you sort of earn your stripes, isn't it? That's where you chalk up most of the points.
Yeah, especially when you combine those with a few DNFs while he's been taking those wins for his direct championship rival. So that's where you really start to get those big point swings. And yeah, where Foley's done well at Hidden Valley, Phil Boak hasn't. And on the other hand, as well at Bathurst, there was a did not start for Phil Boak, so that's a big swing in points there. And as well, I think it's third place in the championship. Will Devenish, I think my graphic is slightly out of date. But Will Devenish also had a DNF at Bathurst, so big swings in the championship there for Foley, who took the win. And yeah, that's where you see those big swings. And it's not just the wins, but also the consistency. When he hasn't been getting those wins, he's been on the podium or just outside the top 5. Whereas for the other guys, they're, out the back end of the top 10 or outside of the top 10. So it's that consistency as well, which can really help bolster your championship attack.
That's exactly right. And as you said, Bathurst was the defining round. Devenish with a first lap DNF, Phil Boak not starting the race, and that literally swung the championship in Brenton Foley's favour and in a big way. That was the decisive round back in the 18th race of the season, which was the 12th round of the championship. So that is where it all came undone for the other two championship contenders. Will Devenish technically was still in the hunt up until Sandown. He won that race, but by virtue of a second place finish for Boak and a third place finish for Foley, he effectively is now too far behind. He's actually 345 points in arrears of Foley, so too much for a race win, given there's only 300 points on the table, but he is only 156 behind Phil Boak, and he has been looking pretty quick in the practice session to date so far. Let's go and have a look at this track for tonight, because for the astute observer, this is a track that doesn't exist anymore. It last hosted events in 2010. The last time we saw supercars here was 2008. So there is a lot to think about for these drivers tonight. A lot of them wouldn't have seen this. Some of them would have seen this circuit from when we had the Lancers and the Super Series last year, which was put on by Brock Harvey. This was a circuit that featured quite heavily in the Lancer Super Series Cup, and it can be an attritional race circuit. It's only 12 corners, 67 laps the duration tonight. It's a very, very busy lap. Lap times are only around the minute 5, minute 6, minute 7 mark, so it comes quickly. There's a lot to think about here too. The long drag to turns 1 and 2, breaking into those 2 turns is going to be very, very challenging. And if you don't get it right, you'll be understeering straight off and you will hit the fence. So keep an eye out. This could be a pretty attritional race, especially around turns 1 and 2. Passing over the bridge itself is a unique feature of this track. It's much like the circuits such as Suzuka, where you have the figure 8 type of circuit arrangement, and it has been a bit disorienting for some of the drivers tonight. Already in practice, there's been a few complaints about cars going over the bridge when you're going under it can make things very, very distracting. That's just a little track feature that comes up with AMS, so a few drivers will having to try and put that out of their minds tonight. And then the final one there, lots of undulation. There is a lot of up and down. Of course, the bridge takes part of that equation as well. But even through the back half of the lap, up through turns 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, all the way back to the start-finish line, there is a lot of uphill and down dale. Also, the flip-throp, the chicane through turns 10 and 11 might catch a few people out tonight as well with the change of altitude. So, Michael, this circuit it's got the potential to be a car breaker, and it's got the potential to cause a fair bit of carnage tonight if drivers are not on the ball.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think the thing to mention, to really emphasize that you mentioned at the end there, is the undulation. It is aggressive. It's like the top of Mount Panorama. We were talking to Brenton Foley just before we came on air, and he said that he feels more comfortable at the top of the mountain than he does going through the elevation changes in the back half of the circuit. I think the thing is that when you're at Mount Panorama, when you're doing the race at Bathurst, you've got to break between that compressed, aggressive nature that you have to do over the top of the mountain and down the hill. You've got those long straights that break up the lap for you. But here, you've really only got that one straight, and even still, you've got to concentrate very hard to get that dive through turn 1 into 2 very nicely, get the car settled through that section. So it's very much a bull ring. You're on the gas, on the brakes, steering every single lap, every single minute it comes around. So it's a very tight, very technical circuit, and it's really going to be, a car breaker, I think. Here, there's a lot that can go wrong at this track.
There certainly will be a lot that can go wrong, and quite often it usually does, as Murray Walker used to say. But we will keep an eye on that, and we'll also bring you up to speed with the championship situation on the other side of qualifying. And the other thing I want to mention too, just about this circuit, have a look at that. 6 left and 6 right hand corners. It's very, very rare that we have a circuit with the same amount of corners left as there is right. That's just the nature of this circuit. Normally, even in a circuit that has an even amount of corners or an even number of corners, you always get one direction of corners that seems to have more of them than the other. So this is a bit of a unique feature of this circuit, 6 and 6. We're just getting ready for the... Sorry, go on, Michael.
Yeah, I was just going to add, even though it's evenly spaced, I still think the right-hand tires are going to be working much harder than the left, because all the hard corners, all the long corners here are all left-handers. So look for that right-hand tire to take a beating around this track.
Yeah, absolutely right. The big corners there, the last turn, the first couple of corners is really where it's going to be at, and sort of the medium speed corners through the middle part of the lap. So we will keep an eye to see how drivers are handling some of those high speed left-hand corners. And we're just going to go over and have a bit of a look and see what is happening at the moment. It doesn't look like we've got any track activity at the moment, and the qualifying session has started. So as per usual, with the exception of the Bathurst qualifying round, which was a special arrangement, the 2 flying laps. So you outlap your 2 flying laps and then your opportunity to come in. And right now we're in this little bit of a holding pattern. Already 2 minutes into the session and not a lot going on. This is a little bit unusual for the 15 drivers that are here as we start to see our first drivers start to come out. Here we go, right on cue. Brute and Peter and the 715 Castrol and Nissan Altima of Termo rolling down the lane there at the moment. Let's see if we can pick up what's going on out there, and we'll pick up the JB Hi-Fi Racing entry of Peter Savage as he goes underneath. I am Savage, and he's in the... I think he's had a look in the chat as well for the live stream. Good to see all the guys watching along at the moment that are there. Good to see some numbers have really supported the AMS Oz Super 2 season all season long. I know it's been a bit of a drawn-out season with us following the regular Super 2 calendar, or actually the week after the Supercars calendar, I should say. But no, thank you everybody for your comments and for your patronage and for watching, and for all the drivers that watch it back over the course of the year as well, and all the positive feedback we've been getting. We'll talk a bit more about that a bit later on in the night. But for the moment, let's focus on this lap that the JB Hi-Fi Racing ZB Commodore is about to put down. Michael, let's have a look at this lap.
So it's just come across the start-finish line to start the lap here. Get down to 6th gear, about 245, 250 Ks as you pitched into turn 1. Braking zone for turn 2 is actually the apex of turn 1. And you can see Peter's just got a little bit of a rear lock going there, which is sprayed him wide at turn 2. But he's going to hit the first sector mark, and it's just under 18 seconds. So not fantastic, but not too bad as he goes through the pair of tight right-handers at 3 and then 4 here. Now starting to come uphill. And again, a little bit of understeer as he comes up the hill there, which is going to be difficult to manage as he comes through the faster section of the track. Very nice there through 6 over the bridge, and then into the bowl here at 7 and then over at 8. Notice here that the camber changes midway through the corner as he approaches turn 9. Very nicely over the curb on the inside there at turn 9 and into the flip-flop at 10-11. We saw cars get very unsettled here, and he just breathes on the throttle nicely as he brakes downhill into the final corner, and then uphill the track comes to meet him. He hasn't quite got the apex there, but he's done a nice job on exit, and he's going to set the first time for the session, and it is a 106.6 to beat. So that's the benchmark for the session so far. In practice, we saw cars get down to the low 105s. So still a little way to go yet. And he's not quite done a good job around turn 2 again. So maybe not an improvement on this lap for Peter this time around.
No, if the first sector split's anything to judge by, he's already 2/10 down. Taking a fair bit of curb there at turn 3 as well. It's not a noted spot for taking a bit of curb because it's not exactly flat. Let's see how he goes up and over the bridge this time around. I particularly like the run he had through the flip-flop at turns 10 and 11. He looked very, very settled, just breathed on the throttle, as you said, just a little bit of throttle just to settle the car as it got through, and he's actually aborted this lap now. So his 106.636 is the only lap that he has put down. Termo obviously is currently in P2, 108.167, and at the moment not too far away from his own personal best at the first sector, but this is a little bit slower than probably where he needs to be. He's going to be battling, as we said, with Will Devonish and Mitch Hathaway. Well, not so much Will Devonish, but more Mitch Hathaway for points in this race to see if he can stay ahead of him in the battle for 4th and 5th.
Yeah, it was interesting to know on this lap from Termo and from Peter's first lap is they're suffering from a lot of understeer in that first section of the track. So I think getting the nose of the car settled through those into those braking areas, that series of slow corners is going to be where you see a bit more of the faster guys get a bit more time as Termo comes around to finish this second lap of his, and he's improved, to a 107.6. So still a second outside the pole time, but a decent improvement. We've got Aaron Thomas on track in the middle of setting his lap at the moment. He's set the fastest first sector on his second lap as he's just coming across the bridge now. And he's driving Rhodey's car tonight.
He's had a moment, touched the grass on the exit of turn 6, I think that was, and got all out of shape. So he was looking pretty handy actually there. He was up at the first sector split by a considerable margin. He's actually purple, 17.9 out of all the runners that have gone so far before him. And yeah, that's ruined his lap.
Yeah, unfortunate there, but that's how busy it is around this track. You just it's so easy to just touch the grass here once and then you're absolutely cooked. So Aaron, he's now dropped down to 5th as we've had laps from Davies and Cam Rutledge come through, both of them in the 207.5s. So very, very tight at that point in time.
And Cam Rutledge is pressing on with it as well, so he's gone on with it, and so too is this man on his first flying lap, Billy Dougal Salonga, who we haven't seen a lot of in the most recent times. He took part in the GT3 round at Zandvoort Park the Sunday just gone, which was great to see him back. Good to see him back behind the wheel of the supercar as well, but quite wide. But looking at a late apex out of the final corner, that's not a bad ploy to come up with here, and puts him to the top by nearly 2/10, 106.441. And then we have a look back to see what Cam Rutledge is up to in P4, and he's down on his own split. So he's had a moment somewhere in the middle sector. He was quite handy up to sector 1 and has lost it all now, and he's actually aborted that and is coming in.
I'm going to bring us back to Billy Dougal Salonga because he's 3/10 up the first sector. Looked like that late apex out of the final corner has slung him down that main straight. He did a very good job through turns 1 and 2, getting the nose tucked in and being stable under braking. So he's just about to come through the bridge now, looking very stable here as he's going through turns 7 and 8, just approaching.
He was millimetre perfect coming out of the bridge corner as well, coming out of turn 6. Like, got it all the way out to the ripple strip as far as you dare, and not much more. He's over half a second up. This is a very, very smart lap. Going to put him into a high 105, which will take a little bit of beating, given that you only have 2 laps to get your best time on the board, and a lot of drivers took a lot more than that to get into the 5s. It's a 5.7. Wow. That's very, very impressive. That is potentially a front row start for BDS.
That was better than his lap in practice as well. So that's a great lap from Billy Dougal Salonga. And the thing that I think typified that lap was just how stable it was. There was no oversteer, there was no understeer, there was no pinch brakes. It was just a very calm, very controlled lap from start to finish.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that one. 100%. Very, very smart. Very, very tidy. And as you said, that's quicker than what he did in practice. And I think the best practice time we saw was a 105.4 or a 105.5. So to do a 7 in qualifying with only 2 laps to do it in is ultra impressive. It's going to take some beating. I think it might be he might be sharing the front row with a PBF car if things go according to plan. We go back to one of the Mustangs here, Zach Ross, one of the Mitre 10 Mustangs. It wasn't too flash through his second flying lap at Sector 1. Coming up to the Sector 2 split, and he's second now. And he's up on the PB, so he's a little bit better than what he was. He's had a better middle sector. So where he is at the moment would sneak him ahead of Turmo and Aaron Thomas. Be within earshot of Cam Rutledge if he can pick up a little bit extra time out of this final corner. And he's going to stop the clocks at a 7.717. So in actual fact, he falls short of Turmo. Literally, he wedged into such a small gap between Aaron Thomas and Turmo. It wasn't funny.
Yeah, very tight there from 3rd to 7th at the moment. It's separated only by 2/10 between Dwayne Davies and Aaron Thompson. Aaron Thompson? Aaron Thomas. I got close. Yeah, so 2/10 between those 5 positions it's a very tight middle sector.
Here's
we actually had a first. Sorry to jump over the top of you. A first lap from Mitch Hathaway, which has put him also into the 5s.
That's precisely where we were about to go. Just because we interluded each other there, but you're right. His first flying lap was extremely quick. It was into the high 5s, and he's within earshot of his teammate here. This is going to be a very tight scrap between HDS Racing teammates.
Yeah, and Mitch was one of the few people to hit a 5 in practice. Different line from Hathaway there compared to his teammate. Much wider through turn 5 as he approached the bridge. But again, very smooth, very clean. And as I say that, he just pinches the front brake, which might see him lose a little bit of time in that middle sector. So he's just about to approach the 2nd sector mark now. We'll see what his time is. And he's up. He's well up. It's a much quicker middle sector in comparison to Billy Doolittle Salonga. So is he gonna break the 105 5 barrier even as he comes onto the main straight downhill to the line?
Wow!
It's a 105.49.
That's quick. I think that's even quicker than the best time we saw in practice overall. Actually, I might be wrong. I'm just going to go down the order. No, we actually have seen a 105.338 from Devonish, but I don't know if that was set in the practice session just gone. But that is the second quickest time we've actually seen in any of the practice sessions all throughout the week, and even this race weekend today. So that's a fantastic lap. So at the moment, it's a provisional front row lockout for HDS Racing, but the heavy hitters are still to take to the track. Foley, Devonish and Boak, they're all out there right now.
And we've got the first flying lap from Will Devonish. He's already up at the first sector. 17.5 is 0.04 ahead of Mitch Hathaway as he comes into turn 4 to start the rise up over the bridge. Locked brake there through turn 4, but he made the apex and he's rising over the bridge now. Let's see if he can keep the car stable over the bridge. Very, very nicely done there. Looks very smooth. Maybe a wheel or two on the grass on the exit of turn 7, but he gets it angled in for that first little chicane and then into turn 9. So this will be the first of the big heavy hitters setting a time, and he's still up 2/10 up at the 2nd sector mark as he goes over the flip-flop. We've got that swapper on over the top of the crest there, but he manages to settle it down and get it braked for that final corner. Now, can we see potentially a 5.3 on the first of Will's laps here? Comes across the line, 5.3.2.
That's quicker than his best lap. That's quicker than the best lap, and that is the quickest lap across the whole entire session. Great car control had to be set on the run down to turn 12. That car wanted to swap ends on him. He was super, super committed through the flip-flop, but he managed to hang on to it, and he's up again fractionally at the Sector 1 split, so pressing on with it, as he always does. He's had a bit of a run of form the last couple of rounds, so Sydney Motorsport Park 2nd place, and obviously won the Sandown event last time out, so come into a little bit of a nice patch in the back half of the season. Unfortunately, a bit of too little too late. Oh, big slapper. How's the car control and how's the slide? It's going to hurt him. It's going to hurt him, but it was super, super impressive, and he's cut the corner there at turn at 9, and yeah, he's out of that. So, but super. He's going to. If you're going to be committed like that around here, you've got to know how to hang on to your car, and he's done just that. Let's go and see if we can pick up the next car on the track, which is Phil Boak. A second down at the 2nd sector split for his first salvo, and then where's Foley? Foley's behind him on the track, or is he a bit further away? No, he's a little bit further up the field. So Boak goes P4. We go back to another one of the heavy hitters we're going to take a look at, was Aldo Benedetti, and he's going to go into the high fives, so 5.9, and then we await the arrival of Brenton Foley's first lap. So here he is just exiting 7.
So yeah, Foley actually exited the pits ahead of both Boak and I'm gonna mess this up, Benedetti, and then chose to warm the tires up more on that final lap. So he's well outside on his first flying lap as well.
Well, he's in trouble because he actually aborted the first lap from some reason. This is his second flying lap, so he's had a moment somewhere, and he's done a 108.0. I didn't even realise that until we cut to him that he was on lap 3 of 4. So that's qualifying has not gone according to plan for Brenton Foley, and Aldo Benedetti has jumped into P4. Phil Boak is P5, up on his time. Now, where's this going to put him? 0.4 of a second. It's not going to be enough to surpass Aldo Benedetti. He needs more time out of this final corner, and he doesn't get it.
And
Aldo, here he comes. And is he going to improve it? No, he loses time as well. So there was only one more car I was looking for to see if it was going to be an improvement, and that was the Mustang of Jiminy Ray Slick, who we haven't actually seen for quite some time. And as actual factors, looks like he's aborted that because time has expired. And we're getting some word through as well that Glenn Miles had a game crash, and so he was the 15th man in the server. But sadly for him, he's going to start rear of grid. But look, to be honest with you, I don't think that's going to make a huge amount of difference in this one, because we potentially could see a quite attritional opening lap if things don't go according to plan for a number of drivers.
Yeah, especially Brenton Foley starting from 12th on the grid. Yeah, confusing qualifying session there, especially after Brenton was one of the pace setters in practice, setting a string of 105s. We'll say though, Will's first lap, first qualifying lap, the 105.32, that was a exemplary example of car control, especially over that last flip-flop at 10-11. That car did not want to end up in a straight line, but he managed to wrestle it together and get on the brakes for turn 12, and yeah, thoroughly deserved pole position from Will Devonish.
No, absolutely right. He's very, very quick. He's showed his because he's put up his colours on his flag and sort of said, well, I'm quick, catch me if you can, and he did that at Sandown. He's doing it again here right now. Commendable effort from the HDS guys, though. Mitch Hathaway and BDS, they had that front row sewn up until Will Devonish arrived on the scene late in that session. Great laps from both of them, and career best qualifying in AMS Oz for both of those guys, I believe. I don't think Mitchell's had a pole. I believe second is the best, and BDS, that's definitely his best effort by far. So props to those guys for doing very, very well and all of that. And a couple of cars are just starting to trickle out in back of shot while we're on in a holding pattern here for the warm-up session. So just a 10-minute warm-up session to go. Glenn Miles is back in for the Playboy Racing entry, which is good to see. So we've got a total of 15 runners for the night. Now we probably need to talk a little bit about how things are going to go here. So I'm going to drag up the drivers' points again here so you can all see how this is all working out. So of course we did mention that Foley's actually got the 10 wins, not the 9. But it's pretty simple tonight. All that Foley needs to do is finish 16th. Well, you can do the math. There's only 15 cars here. Or better, regardless of where his teammate finishes, and he will take out back-to-back Super 2 titles. That's pretty much the easy part. The hard part for Phil Boak is that if Foley drops out of the race for whatever reason, and he needs Foley to not finish the race, then all that Phil needs is 7th or better, and the title would then swing back to him. It is a big, big if. Look, to be perfectly honest with you, Michael, I don't see it happening. I think that even though we know Foley's a racer and we know he likes to get the back out and all that sort of thing, I don't see him just puttering around all night long. I see him challenging for a win. If he can get it, he will take it.
Yeah. Look, the thing is, though, people will do weird things when championships are on the line. If there is an issue for Foley, you could see him just shut up shop. Or you could see him go a little too hard into a pass that maybe shouldn't have been made and suffer irreparable damage. Weird things happen when you're thinking about the championship. I mean, just look at real life examples of the 2017 championship. That fabled Scott McLaughlin versus Jamie Whincup day, where Scott had it all in his hands and threw it away with a few erroneous penalties for incidents he shouldn't have been involved in. And, even look back to 2016 where Shane Van Gisbergen, had an easy pass to make on another driver. I think it was Mark Winterbottom, and pushed him into the wall. And that's the sort of pressure that having a championship hanging over the final race can do. So it's a long shot, sure. It's definitely a long shot, but it's not sewn up until it's more points than you can achieve in a race. So there's a little glimmer of hope there for Phil Boak if you're a Phil Boak fan. But yeah, Foley should be able to wrap this up. Thing is, though, he's made it very difficult for himself. Qualifying in 12th, he's more likely to get involved in something stupid than if he got a good qualifying lap in and qualified in the front half of the grid. So he's made it difficult for himself tonight, and yeah, anything can happen.
Well, in a little interview that I had with Brenton Foley before the race tonight, he actually said to me, and I've got it quoted down here, he said his mindset is, his brain says he's got to play it safe, and then he's going to try, but he also said he's going to try too. But when he backs off, he makes mistakes. So he's going to be driving as usual, but he feels that if he'll be thinking championship if he starts getting caught into a battle. So he's in a bit of a conflicted mindset, I kind of feel at the moment. And this is something that we will bring up on Sunday night coming up for the second to last round of GT3 competition, is that Foley did actually make a mistake when he was battling with Lewis Wedding, and it very nearly ended in a DNF for him. So if you're a fan of Brenton Foley and you're a fan of the GT3 World Challenge that has been running up for the second half of this season, tune into the broadcast on Sunday night, because we're going to show the video that was unsighted to us of what exactly happened to Brenton Foley, and you'll just see how lucky he was not to have surrendered that GT3 World Championship title pretty much on last weekend's race at Zandvoort, because the way he hit the wall and how hard he hit the wall, I looked at that and thought to myself, I had no idea how on earth he survived and how on earth he managed to drag that Dodge Viper home. So he can make mistakes. He's human like a lot of us as well, but my goodness gracious me, anything could possibly happen tonight. So we just need to keep that, I guess, in the back of our minds.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point you make there about the disconnect between his brain saying championship, but then the natural racer in him, wanting to get involved in those battles and be the best. It's kind of like the old adage of playing your natural game in cricket. Too many times you see people try to shut up shop and try and bat out for a draw, and then they all fall apart because they're thinking too defensively and too negatively, and so that might be the same here for Foley. He might get caught thinking defensively and thinking negatively, and end up in an incident that he maybe wouldn't have had he just been thinking like the natural racer in him. So we'll see what happens. He is starting from 12th, as we made mention. So a difficult task in the first stanza of this 175 kilometer race, 67 laps, and we are only 4 minutes left in the warm up before we start gridding up.
Yeah, we're not too far away now from the last race of the Super 2 season. And it's a pretty prudent point that we talk about last and final races, I guess, as well. I mean, we did mention earlier that the last Supercars race in real life was at this particular circuit in 2008. And then right up until the early 2010, I think it was January 2010, they had events going on at this circuit before they shut it down and turned it into a housing estate. But in the world of AMS Oz, or Automobilista Australia, this is the kind of time of year where everything starts to finish up. So this, of course, is the final round of Super 2. Next Monday, we have the final of TCR Oz, which takes place from the Adelaide Street Circuit. And that's going to be an absolute cracking race, the first actual street circuit and the final race of that season. That's certainly going to settle a championship. That's another championship that Brenton Foley is pretty much in control of at the moment, and I dare say not going to be able to be beaten for that. And then we take a look at the GT3 World Challenge, which has 2 races to go, which the second last race is this Sunday coming, 1st of December. That is from Fuji International Speedway, which is we've been to once before. And then the final round will be on December the 8th. That's also from the Adelaide Street Circuit, which we've seen plenty of drama the last time we went there for GT3 racing, and you've actually seen that on the introduction video on all of the AMS Oz videos. There was the big time where Greg Tara went around, and that was also the same event where Corey Ott ran out of fuel and didn't quite get to the finish line. He literally was in millimetres of the finish line and then became non-classified. So that place can certainly bring out all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And then, of course, putting my ARW hat on here, coming up on December the 11th is the final of the 4-part 4 Decades of Imola series, which has been going on with Formula One cars. So the 2018 or 2019 cars, I keep forgetting which era it is, around the most recent edition of the Imola circuit. So certainly looking forward to that. Been great to be part of that as well, and driving all sorts of different Formula One wings and slicks machinery over the course of the last several weeks. So tune into the ARW channel on December 11th in the evening for the final of the 4 Decades of Imola.
Yeah, I checked that out. The first 2 decades, they were really cool races. I think it's a great concept that the RW guys came up with, and to see such high quality racing in those very difficult cars to drive was really cool. Especially for those first 2 eras. I'm gonna also throw my hat in the ring there with the finale of the AMS Oz TCAC series, which is its finale on December 4th, so next Wednesday as well. So that one's going to be a battle between, I better not get this wrong, Brenton Hobson and Will Devonish as well, in some classic, way too high-powered rear-wheel drive old cars. So I think Porsche 911s, Dellaras, Opel GTs, that sort of stuff. So that's been a really good fun championship to commentate on and to watch as well. So I do that one with my friend Chris Riddell. And so, yeah, that one's coming to a close as well next week.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that one, actually. And there, just for the record, as you can see where we've actually been over the course of the Super 2 season this year to get to the point where we are currently at, which we are just in the process of the last 30 seconds or so of practice before the race. In actual fact, we're just watching in back of shot here, Glenn Miles actually rubbing the wall a little bit. So we'll cut back to live pictures and a few drivers electing to take some stops and a few drivers just electing to cut some laps. So Glenn Miles, as we said before, was having some troubles with AMS Oz and AMS in general, and he's now got himself into the server. He's going to be starting dead last on the grid, but I think the most important thing that we've been seeing in the practice session is the volume of drivers and practicing their pit ins and their pit stops and making sure that they can get on and off pit roads. It's a pretty unusual entrance to pit road, which we'll talk a bit more about. It actually doesn't come off the last corner. You actually have to get onto the main straight, and you can just see there where it just starts to dive away. So we'll see if we can pick up a bit of a camera view as the system goes on, but not at the moment. Looks like we're just getting set for a race start here. Bit of an unusual sort of a sky cableized camera here for this particular version of the track. Trackside cameras themselves are absolutely brilliant. Going to give us a fantastic view of what exactly happens. Actually, that fact, right where Cam Rutledge is now, that's where the pit lane entry is. So you can see it's actually on the racing line. You've got to come off the racing line and get slowed down quite quickly to get into the lane. It's a bit hard to spot too because of the white walls all around it. So if you're following somebody in a pretty close proximity, you're going to have to be really...
Years gone by, so it is not conventional, and certainly something that teams and drivers will have to have a look at as we start the warm-up lap.
Yep, let's take a look at this grid real quick because it's only a short lap. So Will Devonish gets the last pole of the season. Fantastic lap, 1:05.329, quickest of the weekend, quickest of the week. Alongside him is going to be Mitch Hathaway, his best qualifying of the season for HDS Racing. So too Billy Dougal-Salonga, best qualifying for him of the season as well. Aldo Benedetti making another one of the special guest appearances that he's made from time to time throughout the season aboard the Scuderia Alitalia Mike Coulston number 66 car. Phil Boakes, the leading PBF qualifier, the 015, second place in the championship out of P5. And looks like Peter has missed the start, and he's going to come out. He's going to have to be careful here not to cross the pit lane exit line. He'll have to start from the lane. D2, Dwayne Davies is the first of the Mustangs. the D2R black number 55. Then back to Cam Rutledge, second of the CRE Motorsport cars, fighting away in Pro-Am with Steve Burko. Termo, Castrol Nissan Altima, 715, P9, Zach Ross leading of the Top Gear Racing Mustangs in P10. And back to Aaron Thomas, on debut, I think, from judging by what I'm seeing on the screens here, aboard Roadie's 010 PBF Academy car. Brenton Foley, buried in the pack. How's he going to get through the opening stanza of this race? Steve Burko, second of the Top Gear Racing Mustangs, fighting with Termo for honours in Pro-Am. Steve fighting with Cam Rutledge for honours in Pro-Am, I do apologise. Glenn Miles, P14, and Jiminy Ray Slick is in the garage, and if he takes to the track, he is also going to have to start from the lane. Now, it's a slightly downhill start here, so they're going to have to be careful that they don't roll too far forward and cop a penalty. As we get underway, 67 laps begins now. Devonish got a fantastic launch, and although it says he's in third place there, it's because of the situation down here at the pit lane exit where everybody is currently situated and waiting to come out. And so far it looks relatively above board. There's not a great deal going on. It looks like everybody has got a pretty comfortable start, pretty clean. Nobody going off the track at this point in time. It looks like a reasonable start. And I haven't seen any body panels go flying yet, Floody, but having a look a bit further through the field, Zach Ross is the only person I can see that's probably made a couple of positions. Foley's made one, and Zach Ross has made two.
Yeah, there was a little bit of argy-bargy down the pack, but only one or two cars stepping off into the grass around turn one. Everyone very well behaved and on their way around this 2.6 kilometre circuit. So it is still Will Devonish from Mitch Hathaway and Billy Dougal-Salonga from the first three slots in the grid. Then Aldo Benedetti, Phil Boat, and Cam Rutledge. Cam Rutledge actually up 2 spots around that first lap. So a good first lap from Cam Rutledge in his battle for Pro-Am honours. Everyone else getting around the first lap without too much incident.
And Foley as well, we're just going back to take a look at Brenton Foley. He's made 2 spots as well, so he's gotten past Steve Burko, he's gotten past Aaron Thomas, and he sits P10, tucked in behind Termo, who can be a bit difficult to pass sometimes. And then there's this angry little pack of cars ahead, Cam Rutledge, Dwayne Davies, Zach Ross, and then obviously Termo ahead of Foley. Now, Foley's going to be careful there. I thought there might have been a little bit of Morse code on the rear of Termo's rear bumper there. Camera angle to sort of cut away before we could actually see it. Passing can be notoriously difficult at this circuit, so you've got to be really committed and you've got to get a really good run. The most obvious spot for passing is going to be coming out of the final corner and win the drag race down to turn 1.
Yeah, but even still, that drag race down to turn 1 has that little complication of the turn 1 kink in it. So you've got to make the move basically before turn 1 or really commit to a dive out of turn 1 there. So that's going to be a definite point to follow throughout the race. See who has the confidence to make the passing moves, as Foley is still very much tucked under the bumper of Termo as they file through the flip-flop onto the final corner.
Oh, he's gone wide.
Run a little wide.
Yep, that's the invitation that Foley needed. No second invitation required. That was a gift.
Gone around as well. Davies has given that a free kick. He's in 12th position now. He just got, I think, maybe a bit of oversteer out of the final corner and sent him around. Just having a look to see if there was any help that he got. We're taking
a look on the replay at this one now. That is a little bit of an interesting thing. Doesn't look like he was. I'm not sure if there was a little bit of Morse code there because Zach was very, very close, but a bit hard for us to see from that angle as to if he got helped or not. But there's no real damage on the back side of that car, so.
Well, there is now. I'm just going to bring you back to live action. Davies has gone off at turn 1. It looks like with a blown engine as well.
Yeah, he's done. So he's out of this. He is completely gone. So that all lasted 2 laps, unfortunately, for D2 Davies. And I'm wondering if he got some help from Glenn Miles here because there's a bit of damage to that car. Let's see if we can. Oh, actually, in fact, I think it's separate incidents. No, actually, I don't think it is. We're just rewinding it here. So here is Glenn Miles. In actual fact, yeah, you're right. Actually, it is a separate instance. So Glenn Miles has gone off at turn 1 and 2, high speed, kathunk, and then D2's done exactly the same. So, in actual fact, I think that car had flames coming out the back of it before it even got to the gravel trap. And Glenn Miles.
Bring you back to live action because Foley is going down too wide into the first corner. He makes the move on Cam Rutledge, who lost 2 spots down that main straight.
Big lockup though.
Yeah, he's gone deep into that first corner. He managed to hold that position. So that entire battle pack has now been released from the rear of Cam Rutledge, and now Zach Ross and Brenton Foley are able to maybe step away a bit here as it continues on further back between, is that Steve Burko and Aaron Thomas?
Correct.
For 10th and 11th.
And Steve saw him coming as well and sidestepped Aaron Thomas. That's a good little move there at turn 4. Very clean move, committed early. And Steve just sidestepped and just actually was going to turn in and realised he was there. Probably didn't had his spotter tell him very, very late that he needed to give a little bit of track room there, and he does so. So that's a nice move from Aaron Thomas. We saw him in GT3 World Challenge on the Sunday just gone, and he occupied the Lamborghini Huracan, I believe it is, the Lamborghini Huracan Trofeo, and did a pretty commendable job. So good to see him picking up these supercars for another bit of a run here. Now, I'm just noticing ahead. Who's that? It's gone wide. Is that Cam Rutledge? Yeah, Cam Rutledge just went a little bit wide there because Termo, I think, must have had a good run and tried to break the toe. Down here into the second corner. And you're right.
Just ahead
Foley and Zach Ross have really stepped away now. In actual fact, Foley's latched onto the back of Zach Ross and sort of trying to use him to tow him along here, I think.
Yeah, it was a little bit of physical latching on there through turn 2 that I think you just missed. A little bit of a bump through the apex of turn 2, but no harm, no foul, and they're both playing on. I think with Rutledge, you got a bit of oversteer out of that final corner and kind of involuntary went to the inside. So a lot of action in the back half of the pack here, and even just ahead, the battle between Benedetti and Phil Boak is quite close as well. So a few little battle packs that have sprung up here in the early stages of this race, and we're only about 1/10 of the way through as we come across the start lap 6.
Yeah, this battle between Boak and Benedetti is really starting to get feisty here. They were line astern coming out of the final corner. Good top-end speed from the PBF Commodore as well, getting pretty close to Benedetti before you get to the braking zone at 1 and 2. And Benedetti's wide here, so this allows them now to run side by side out of 2 under the bridge. It's going to give the high ground to Benedetti, though, on the inside for the right-hander at 3. And he parked it rather smartly there. There's a yellow flag just down here at turn number 3 and 4. Now, what's this for? Because Miles was in the pits. In actual fact, it is Glenn Miles, and I think he's actually just pulled over to let them go, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he's parked on the side there. Hopefully he can get going again. I was about to say he got safely back to pit lane after his incident with the turn 1 and 2 tyre barrier, but he was just parked on the outside there. But up front, Devonish has bolted. In actual fact, Devonish, I think, might be very, very close to setting the quickest lap of the race at the moment. He certainly looked like he was about to. And we get to the line, and the answer to that equation is no by 2 thousandths of a second.
Another quick thing on that lap, Foley made the move on Zach Ross through turns 1 and 2, so that's now released Foley from the rear of Zach Ross's Mustang. Then this battle pack further back between Rutledge, Termo, Burko, and Thomas is still very feisty between the 4 of them. All while Benedetti is still holding off Phil Boak through the first sector as well. So there's plenty going on. In fact, Termo's going to go for a dive into the turn 2 apex on Cam Rutledge, but now he's vulnerable to Steve Burko as they come underneath the bridge, and Burko's even going to have a look here. Termo runs wide.
Oh yeah, he worried him out of it.
He runs very wide.
Yeah, I think Termo got a bit worried out of it there, thinking that Steve was going to send it on him, or lick stamp and send it, as you want to quote Corey Ott from a little while ago, I think last year actually, and he's actually lost 2 spots as a result of that. I think he might have been a bit worried about turning in, so decided to stay wide, and all of a sudden he was out in the weeds, out in the marbles, and lost 2 spots. So you're right, this little angry pack is fighting over the back half of the top, or the back part of the top 10. Oh, that's a bit of a biff and barge there from Steve Burko, having to check up after getting into the back of Cam Rutledge, and now on the wrong side. In actual fact, he's dropped to the back of his queue.
And Termo's made contact with Thomas.
Yeah, he has too.
With Thomas in the last corner, and that's caused a bigger accident with Peter Savage coming through as well.
So that's disaster. That's for these guys. That's really spoilt this little battle that was going on. And then see, it all started with Steve Burko that got into the back of Cam Rutledge and checked up, and then here we go again down to the final corner. Now, what happened? We were watching Steve Burko. Oh yeah, Termo's got straight into the rear quarter. Let's look. To be fair, Aaron Thomas left the door wide open for Termo to go up the inside there, but that was a little bit clumsy from Termo.
Yeah, well, there's leaving the door open, then there's getting it slammed on. Well, yeah, getting smashed into it as well. So I think Turmo had the understeer, the front brakes locked, and yeah, made contact. Now he's gone off at turn 2 as well, made contact with the tyres. So not a good few corners for Turmo there, as he's now struggling back to the track in 12th position.
Actually puts Pete Savage into the top 10 after starting from the pit lane. Another one
we've
back
lost
into the game for us.
Boak's gone off at the last corner. So what's happened here?
No, he has gone off at the last corner. He's had a moment. He's had a shocking lap. You're absolutely right. So, again, there's action aplenty going off. He was tucked in behind Aldo Benedetti. Here we go. What happened? Oh, didn't quite commit to the braking zone and then he lit it up. So he was wide at the final corner, and he's then lit it up trying to stay with Benedetti, and lucky not to have any damage there, but he has surrendered 5th place to his teammate now. So not a good swing for Phil Boak. He needed to be up front with all of this, and he's now down to 6th.
Yeah, I think he may have been caught out by Benedetti's earlier braking. It looks like he thought about the move and then balked at it, kind of like a motorbike rider kind of standing up the guy behind him by just braking a little earlier. And then, yeah, as he's tried to put the power down, just spun it around. So not a good few minutes there for Boak.
He's a bit leery. He's a bit leery on the loud pedal there as well out of turn 9 as well. So he's not got a very good handling car, especially after it probably just lit up its tyres to get it back on track. Now, we probably need to start thinking about strategy in a little bit here too, as Turmo's actually in the lane rather early.
Because Benedetti's off at turn 1 and 2.
Oh dear. And that's gone straight on at turn number 1 and 2. I'm gonna have to bind the replay button to something a bit more than just my ring finger on my left hand at the moment, because there's too many things going on, and we have to keep going back and having a look. Yeah, overcommitted on the braking. Big lock up. Couldn't stop it. On the grass. Slide. Oh, very, very slight touch of the wall. So I think he might be a bit lucky there not to have too much damage to worry about. But that is a huge incident for Aldo Benedetti. And I think he might be coming in. He's actually got some front brake locking, I think, as well. So maybe might be an early stop here.
Yeah, probably flat spotted that tyre as well. So, yeah, it's all happened in this first 10 laps. It's going crazy, but the top 3 have just kind of sailed away. Yeah,
the top 3 had quite sailed away. Devonish with about 3 and a bit second margin over Mitch Hathaway, and then Billy Douglas-Salonga not too far behind either. Now, before all this incident started kicking off here, Michael, I was going to start talking about the strategy part of things, because we started to get some figures before the race began that drivers can get about 28 laps on a single stint of fuel, and then you're going to have to stop twice, obviously, because you're only going to get to lap 56, and then you'll get to lap 67 after that. So it's a 2-stop race. So some drivers coming in around the lap 9 or 10 mark probably isn't as silly as it sounds. If you're going the reverse strategy, it takes you off sequence to everybody else. But as we saw before, Turmo had a bit of a moment where he got into the back of Aaron Thomas. So coming in and maybe doing a bit of damage repair and getting your first stop out the way is probably not as silly as idea as it sounds.
Yeah, and the thing is though, by committing to that early stop, you lose a lot of flexibility. So critical lap number, if it's a 28 lap stint, is going to be lap, that's how we go here, 39?
28 and 28 is 56.
Yeah, so it'll be...
Your mental math is not very good here, I don't think.
I don't know. Yeah, but the point is, if there's about 10 or 11 laps between the 58 mark and the 67 mark, right? So if you are on the wrong side, if you fall the wrong side of the 28 lap stint, if you're only getting 27 or 26 and you try to stretch that out, you're not quite gonna be able to make it. So Turmo, luckily I've seen with Turmo, he's got a good right foot when it comes to managing his fuel consumption. So he should be okay, but maybe for some of the others who are a bit heavier users of fuel, they might not be able to commit to that early stop. I think you're more likely going to see cars come in maybe lap 13, 14, just to give themselves a little bit of buffer, a little bit of flexibility, or you'll see them stretch it all the way out to that 28 number, just to sort of see where the race settles at that point.
It could also be a case of trying to break it up into as even chunks as you possibly can. So maybe like a 22 or 40, a lap 22 and a lap 44, for example, still gives you a little bit of flexibility. If you take a full tank of fuel on, you can then maybe take a shorter fill toward the end of the race, depending on how your pace is and how you're battling with other drivers as well. Of course, we've only got the 13 cars on the circuit at the moment. Jimmy Ray Slick not taking the start. Dwayne Davies already out after 2 laps. Nice little battle starting to brew back here between Cam Rutledge and Peter Savage as well.
Oh, we've had Foley off at turn 1.
Yeah,
as well.
we've had Foley, and Boak had actually repassed Foley. So Foley's had probably one of the first moments that he's had. And we suspected that this could be a tough race for him. He's done what Aldo Benedetti did, but just not as severe. But then he had 2 wheels on the grass and tried to turn in and looped it. Wow.
And I think he's done that 2 laps in a row, because his previous lap, the first sector, was also in the 22nd area. So, yeah, a bit scrappy from Foley. I'm not sure what's happening in his brain at the moment, but it's certainly not clear cut, as he's also been passed. No, he hasn't been passed by Benedetti.
He's been passed by Zach Ross.
By Zach Ross, yeah.
So this is something that we spoke about before when we talked about Foley and the mindset about trying to hunt down this final challenge of getting another championship under his belt. Second, he'd be defending his title if he could get it done. He's done it again. We're watching it on stream here. He's done it again, and that's way, way worse. At least he's kept it out of the fence, but he's going to surrender 7th place or 6th place to Aldo Benedetti. He's lucky he's got some margin on Steve Burko, but this is not good. This is starting to become habitual now. This is twice in 2 laps, and you believe he might have done it again a lap earlier, so he doesn't want to be doing too much of this. This is going to start eating into the mindset.
Yeah, and it's a pretty fragile mindset if you keep making that same mistake at the same corner every single time. It's now 3 in a row, but he's doing it a different way each time, which is the interesting thing. So we didn't see the first one. The second one was just a front end sort of wash. That third one, he had the rears locked up there. He was checked up, and there was no way he was making that corner. So it's interesting to see how the pressure of the championship has started to play out on Foley and how he's making these little mistakes.
Having a look at his pace as well, his lap pace in terms of the middle sector, he missed an apex or 2 through there. His sector time was a 34 flat, which is not terrible compared to a lot of the other cars around him. But the lap time overall, 13.9, considering that the red leader is doing 106s, and he was very close again to going off. He flirted with the grass there on the run through turns 1 and 2. But he just needs to leave, as Xeris from ARW likes to say, you need to leave the margin for error in circumstances like this.
Yeah, just kind of reset and just kind of catch your breath a little bit. It's very hard to do around the circuit. We were talking to Foley earlier, and he said he was struggling with how busy the circuit was. Made mention pre-race that he said he struggles here more than he does over the top at Bathurst. So he's going to just find a way to get some zen, get some center, because he looks very scrappy at the moment. And just to round off your point about that middle sector, guys at the front at the moment in the middle sector are doing a 33.4 compared to his last lap of 34.4 in that middle sector. So it's not looking all that smooth for Foley at the moment.
No, and the car, I just noticed, wanted to jump sideways a little bit out of the final corner too. Just trying to pick the throttle up a little bit too early. It's just got to manage. It's got to be really, really careful. See what I mean? He's flirting with it again. There he goes again. He looks like he took a little bit of left-hand side curb coming through the left-hander at turn 1, and just had to modulate the braking so not as to upset the car by putting the car on the grass at all. So we'll watch him with vested interest out of our cameras off screen just to see what's going on. He's locked the brake a few times going into 4 there as well. So let's keep an eye on what happens with him. His mindset's going to be a little bit shot, I would imagine, just after those few off-track moments. And I believe it might have been the Glenn Miles car off. Actually, no, it is the Glenn Miles car off. And Jimny Race Slick, we have officially been registered as a DNF, having not started the race. So that closes the loophole on that little unusual anomaly that we hadn't seen him take to the track. But the only real close battle that's happening on track at the moment is this little battle here for the final spot inside the top 10, which is Cam Rutledge and Aaron Thomas. And Cam's been driving a pretty defensive race, especially when he had that little freight train of cars behind him, which then got upset with the incident at this corner here between Thomas and Turmo. But Cam's just battling away, as we said before. He's currently ahead of Steve Burko in the battle for Pro-Am by 138 points, and right where he is right now, sitting in 10th, Burko in 8th. That would be more than enough for him to remain as the Pro-Am winner and championship winner for the season. He actually needs to not finish this race, and Burko needs a few more points than what he's got right now to overtake him. And have a look at the lines here, Michael, driving straight down the middle of the road.
I'm just going to bring your attention just up the road a little bit to Burko, who's just under a bit of pressure from Peter Savage and has conceded that position.
Yes.
So now Rutledge is only one position away from his direct rival on track, albeit a full 9.5 seconds. But yeah, it was a weird moment. He just came out from under the bridge. It looked like he missed the turn-in marker and the car just washed out on him and he went over the curb. So a bit of a weird moment there for Burko, and that just, again, plays it a little more into Cam Rutledge's hands. Although in saying that, Rutledge is under some pretty intense pressure from Aaron Thomas for that last spot in the top 10.
Yeah, very eagle-eyed observation there, you're right. And have a look at the middle sector time from Steve Burko. It was a 35.3, so that's where he went wrong. As you said, he came over the top of the bridge and just missed the turn-in point, and that is in the second sector, so hence why he has gone a bit backwards in this battle. And Peter seems to have cleared out despite the lock-up there going into 4. He has cleared away, so this little battle is an interesting one. And you're right, going back to the Cam Rutledge and Aaron Thomas battle, that's still pretty close as well.
Yeah, and another moment that we've had on track is Zach Ross. He was just beginning to fall under pressure for fourth place with Benedetti, and he's gone off at turn 1, just straight off,
and he's out.
The wall.
And he's out of this race. So that's another a bit of attrition that we've had across the race as well. So 3 non-finishes, 2 of those via attritional means, and 1 near attritional finish to a car, which was Glenn Miles into the very same spot. So that's a bit of an we did suspect it was going to be a kart breaker.
Yeah, Miles has given away the ghost again at turn 1, and he's finally done enough damage for that Ultima for it to not be revived. So the zombie Ultima of Glenn Miles has been withdrawn from the race.
What did you just say, the zombie Ultima?
The zombie Ultima, because it keeps getting repaired and reborn.
The spit water cleaners Nissan Ultima is what is branded on that car. We're taking a look at our race leader at the moment. Will Devonish has started his 20th lap, and he has a 5-second margin at the moment, and he's actually starting to come up on some lap traffic. So the battle he's starting to come up on at the moment is 11th, 10th and 9th. So that's Termo, Aaron Thomas and Cam Rutledge all up the road. Cam will step aside for his teammate Will Devonish, but the other two are not going to want to step aside in any great hurry because they want to fight over the positions that are on offer at the moment.
Well, Termo is a lap down and to start with, and in fact they've just had a little session of tripping over each other. So Rutledge and Thomas went side by side to turn 1. There was a little bit of contact, which sent Rutledge wide, and then so Thomas gave that position back, which kind of almost caused a Bathurst 2015 where the lapped car coming back between the two of them almost made contact. So they're trying to trip over each other, doing their best they can.
Devonish had a moment, just Devonish had a big slide out of the final corner, and it won't be enough to surrender his lead, but it's been severely reduced. I think he just did what Boak and Foley have done a couple of times, and that's just try and put the power down a little bit too early out of that corner, just not letting the car naturally come out of it and gradually picking up the throttle, and that has chopped the margin down to less than a second. It's a lot less than a second now. It's probably even about half a second from himself to Mitch Hathaway. So Hathaway could potentially look at sending one up the inside here. This is game on.
Yeah, and what I was about to say is that when we were comparing, Foley's driving earlier when he was making those mistakes at turn 1, I was just having a look at Devonish and it was super smooth. There was no mistakes, no outbraking, no recorrection of the steering at all. Now that's all changed with that one mistake. Now he's under the fiery pressure of Mitch Hathaway, although he's actually just managed to eke out a car length as they go through turn 9. But it just goes to show how quickly things can change in this series and on this track. Only moments ago, Devonish had a 5-second buffer, and now that's reduced to 0.
Absolutely. Just looking to see how he goes out of the corner this time. That's a much better line. I think he might have just tried to take a slightly different line out of the final corner and maybe just the camber of the road and where he picked the throttle up just didn't lend itself to the car behaving the way that he wanted it to. Taking a fair bit of curb, taking a fair bit of curb there, it has to be said, through turn 1 as well. The car just had a little bit of a shimmy and a shake as it came through turn 1. This is one of the interesting bits about this circuit too. You can see all sorts of different elevations that all the different cars are running on from multiple camera angles here, so it's fantastic to watch. Hathaway hasn't given up pursuit here yet. He's thinking that maybe the traffic might start to come into play here, especially in this part of the circuit they're about to enter. Now, if you're Mitch Hathaway here, Michael, what do you do? Do you try and stay and mimic whatever Devonish does? If he comes in, you come in, or do you maybe try and think seriously about an undercut here if Devonish gets held up a little bit?
That's a tough one.
We're in the window.
I think if Will comes in, you have to come in to keep the pressure on him. But if he stays out, I think you've got to come in regardless, because either you're getting stuck behind traffic or you're not putting the pressure on the driver ahead. So now both of them have made it past Thomas, and now they've got to make their way past Rutledge. So Rutledge sidestep at turn 1, gives Devonish the inside line very nicely. He's going to do the same for Hathaway. Oh, it's going to be close. It's going to be close.
He'll be getting the blue flags right now, so I think he'll just let him have him up the inside here into turn number 3. Good sidestep. Well done. Aaron Thomas and Cam Rutledge did very, very well to sidestep these two at appropriate points. And not only that, they're still running line astern as well, which is good to see. So they'll continue their battle while these two continue on up the road.
I think the correct play would have been to come in, because that way you're not messing about with passing traffic like that. But Hathaway might have his own plan in mind. He might be coordinating something with a Salongo just behind them. So yeah, it's a complex little thing. I was surprised we didn't see any earlier pit stoppers. In fact, I think the only person to actually pit so far has been Termo, and I think maybe Benedetto as well.
Aldo Benedetti is a possibility, I think, because he's down in 10th at the moment, but he did have that off-track excursion at turn 1 earlier on as well, so I'm not sure if he's come in as a result of having done that.
I think his last lap was a 58, so that suggests to me a pit stop.
I would tend to agree then, if that's the case. If he's done a 1 minute 58, that he will have come in for a pit stop. So that means that he's pulled the trigger and gone. As we said, he's within the window. This lap 22, sort of 23 realm is where you could have quite comfortably sort of split the race into thirds if you really wanted to go that far. These guys will probably be looking to take it right up to the maximum fuel stint, so they get an idea of how these tyres are going to behave with a full tank of fuel and a full load and full flat-out racing. I mean, we're 26 minutes into this race, and we've chalked up about to chalk up the end of our 24th lap.
I've been amazed, actually, just how clean the front three have been in comparison to the rest of the field. The only moment we've seen from the top three in this stint so far has been Devonish's indiscretion at the final corner. Otherwise,
Devonish is in. Devonish is in. So that was a very late decision, I think, because he's come in. So he's come in at the end of lap 24. So Hathaway will take the lead here, and so too will BDS will go through. So that's now 1-2 for HDS. This 40k pit lane speed limit seems like an eternity for Will Devonish at the moment.
Yeah, it's a very stark comparison between what the cars are doing just meters to his left versus what he's doing in the pit lane. He's going to lose positions to Boak and Foley as well, I think, in this pit sequence. As I'm watching that.
And he's on the move. So we just cut to the onboard cam and you see how slow 40 kilometres an hour is. It is painfully slow. He's dropped to 5th and he's got margin on Steve Burko, so he'll come out without a problem here and be quite comfortably ahead of Burko. The question is, has he got any other lap traffic around him? And the answer to that element is no. So not a bad window to drop into.
Yeah, I think that'll be an important point as the race goes on. There is only... I've just seen someone go off at turn 9. It's Benedetti. He hit the wall hard at turn 9, lost his front bumper and front bonnet and everything, and that's it.
Yep,
that's
he's
it for
done.
Benedetti in the Alitalia car.
So he is out. We will get a replay of this. So there's the bowl at turn 7, and the lap traffic was just ahead. So that was the Cam Rutledge battle with Aaron Thomas. Oh, big understeer moment. Straight off. Wallop. Good night. No coming back from that.
Yeah, not at all. And there was nothing, especially that Rutledge did there, to cause that incident. He was just there. He was just in the way, and that enough that was enough to break the rhythm for Benedetti, and yeah, just straight in the wall. Nothing he could do about that after it started happening.
Absolutely not. Now there's a PBF car with a bit of a leery moment coming through turn 1 and 2. That's Phil Boak, and Pete Savage is in behind him, but of course Phil Boak is a lap ahead, having
I'm just going to
not
quickly
stopped.
redirect your attention to 4th and 5th. Hathaway's just come out of the pits. He's come out ahead of Devonish as he goes through turn 1. So, Devonish
no, squeeze it
down just on the apex of turn 2 and manages to retain that position. That was very, very close between what is now effectively the race leaders after taking that pit stop. So it almost looked like Hathaway was going to nab it there as he came through turn 1, but Devonish with the anchors on.
Here it is again, and here's Devonish. You could see him on the main straight, and the problem for Mitch Hathaway was the 40k an hour pit lane speed limit, and he made a gain. There's no doubt that Mitch Hathaway made a gain in the pits in terms of track position and getting closer to Devonish, but now that Devonish's tyres are up to temperature, he is bolting.
It would have been a great steal for Hathaway to get that position and hold it for maybe that first complex of corners. Because I don't think Devonish, unless he got a fantastic run out of 2, I would have been able to make a move at 3 or 4. It's very tight through there, so it's very difficult. As we got one of the PBF cars in and Billy Dougal-Salonga just coming out of the pits now.
So that leaves Foley in control of this race for the moment.
Still yet to take a pit stop.
Nope, and still locking up at turn 4. So he's done that a few occasions, and I'm not sure if he's one of those people that likes to sit there and watch the stream and maybe just put on a little bit of a show, because sometimes we like to see him get the back out, but not when you're 27 laps or 26 and a half laps into a stint and your tyres are worn. You don't want to be doing that too often.
We'll have to wait and see whether or not he takes the pit stop this time around, maybe gets onto some better tyres. I wonder how he's managed to keep those tyres for so long, considering all of his off-track excursions, as I think he will be the last one to make his pit stop when he eventually does. And he goes around again. So at the very least, Foley's getting decent fuel economy out of his car. And his lap times aren't great compared to what the other cars are setting on their flyers on new tyres. So Devonish with a 6 flat, Hathaway with a 6.3 rather, and then the rest of the cars still filtering out of their pit stops. So yeah, I'm not sure what the logic is for running this long into a stint on tyres that are that scarred, but I guess Foley has the championship in mind. Doesn't need to do anything else other than just putt around at his own pace. So
maybe he's realised with all the little issues that he's had at turns 1 and 2 that the mindset has had to change, and that he's just had to sit there and do what Will does, just do consistent lap times. They don't need to be quick. They just need to be on the black top. You can see he's not hustling the car in any great fashion through some of the high-speed corners, taking enough curb to stay on the racing line, but not to make a huge amount of lap time gain. And we'll see him come to the line this time around, and let's get a read on the lap time. It's a 7 flat, and his best lap is a 6.2. So I think just this mindset has probably come along and gone, well, I've done this too many times, as he gets all out of shape in a big lock-up, and it's going to send him off for turn 2. But thankfully there's no tyres there, and he will live to fight another day. But as he said to us in the interview before the race, he could potentially make the mistakes when he doesn't get into that groove. It's a fine balancing act. Some drivers can do it. Some drivers can reduce their pace by that couple of percent to be comfortable, but do enough to keep the car on the blacktop. Foley doesn't seem to be like that. When he tries to do that, he makes mistakes, and he makes them more often than he would like to. And it looks like we're going to see him in. Maybe those tyres have actually cried enough.
It's at the end of the fuel window as well. 28 laps, wasn't it?
29. Well, 28 was what we expected, but that's when pushing. He's been able to get 29, so he's actually doing slightly better. So he's going to have a really short fill on the final stop if he's going to do this again. And who's he got behind him at the moment? I think that's
That is the race leader.
That's the race leader, Will Devonish. So that's
the effective race leader.
Yes, Devonish is going to take over that lead of the race. So the question will be for Foley is how quickly does Devonish get around this circuit with Foley now in the pits. BDS will go through. Steve Burko is the next one we want to keep an eye on, the man currently in 5th place, who'll go up to 4th. and then Phil Boak will go up to 5th as well, and I think that will be where Foley comes out in P6 when all this is said and done. No, Burko in.
I'm pretty sure that's on strategy as well. I'm pretty sure Burko hasn't yet made his first stop. So that kind of cleanses the rest of the field. So remember, Boak and Foley were 4th and 5th before their pit stops as well.
Right you up. So that means Foley will come out in 5th place. And then Steve Burko will be out in 6th. And Pete Savage is coming around the final corner, but Foley's already going to be out at turn 1. And I think the battle will be on with Steve Burko here potentially, just to see how Pete Savage comes across the line. In actual fact, he's going to round Burko up with miles of tarmac to spare, actually. So that's a net 6th and a good run so far, having started P6. So he did mention in the YouTube channel chat that he was not looking forward to the race. He thought it was going to be a bit of a difficult one for him. But he's in P6 for the moment. We just saw Will Devenish pop the fastest lap in as well. And speaking of a number of guys that are watching along in the chat, fellow commentator Hans Brunswick is in there and lending his support to the commentary crew tonight, saying it's fantastic to see it all good so far. And miss you, Hans. It was good to have you 2 weeks ago. Shame you can't be here, but then there's real life commitments that get in the way sometimes. A couple of the guys just saying they crashed and burned, and we're going all out for it on maximum attack, which is always fun to watch. And Mike Coulston, who is the owner of the car that Aldo Benedetti piloted today, has informed the Scuderia Alitalia team that they need to instruct Aldo Benedetti that the car needs to be returned in one piece, and it is currently not. So that is Mr. Benedetti, the Italian, is going to have some explaining to do to the man from Saudi Arabia.
Classic banter. Love it, Mike. Brilliant stuff. I love the level of interaction we're actually able to achieve here with the YouTube comments. So keep sending in your comments if you are watching. We are having a read of them when we get the chance. And yeah, it's great fun. It's great fun to have this sort of connection with people as we're broadcasting the race.
Well, this race is, aside from the battle for first place, which we'll go back to and have a bit of a look here, Mitch Hathaway is 2.2 seconds in arrears of Will Devenish. They're just rounding up Turmo on the round turn 5 now. This is really the only close battle that's on track. Everything else is pretty well strung out, and Foley and Pete Savage is pretty close as well, but that'll be interesting to see if Foley's actually going at full chat or not. We won't get a read on that for probably a couple more laps, I'd imagine. We'll just keep an eye on that gap. But out in front, it is business as usual, or back to business as usual, for Will Devenish, who pretty much led the Sandown race start to finish. Dominated the race, I think it's probably the right word for it. Sadly for him, it was all in vain. Foley finishing on the podium in that race meant that it took Will out of championship contention at the last round. So this is for pride and for building on towards next season.
Just a comment I want to make about the top 3 at the moment. Even despite Devenish's fastest lap, which was a 5.7, which bettered his fastest lap, I think, by 0.2 that he owned earlier in the race. He's not getting away. Hathaway is still only a stone's throw, 2.5 seconds behind Will Devenish, and even Billy Douglas-Solomo is only another few seconds. It's more 10 seconds. So that's a bit more of a gap between second and third. But the top 3, the last 3 laps have been ultra consistent. So it was a 6.1 versus a 6.2 versus a 6.1 last lap around for the top 3. The previous lap was a 6 flat versus a 6.1 versus a 6.3. So it's ultra consistent from that top 3, and they are showing that they are the class of the field, and have been since the very beginning of the race.
Yeah, they seem to have their car setups really well sorted. Foley, on the other hand, he sort of felt a bit lost.
He's made another mistake.
Yeah,
he's made another mistake.
Has he made another mistake again? Yeah, he surrendered position to Peter, so he's had another one of those moments through the first sector again. Big lock up from Peter just ahead, but yeah, this has not been the race that Foley wanted, but this is sort of like, as you said earlier to me, Michael, one of those races where you just put
lost Boak's in the wall at the final corner.
Oh, here he is, and he's lost a bonnet as well. This is not good for the championship charge, and that car is going absolutely nowhere. This could be it. and we're just looking to see what happened here. We just have to wind it back a little bit. What on earth did he do? He skated it into turn 12, and he skated through the thing, and that could be terminal.
And that's it. That's it from Phil Boak. That's it.
Over and done with. Sayonara, whatever you want to say. That car is done. And there goes any hope of the championship. Phil Boak out of this race. Foley could effectively decide to retire the car at this particular moment. He is in 5th place. So moves up one spot by virtue of his teammate going out of this race. But, wow, what a shame. What an absolute shame.
It was just the flip-flop at the top of the mountain, and it just was enough for Boak to arrow off into the wall. Now, while there is the focus on Foley here and him taking the championship, which must be a breath of fresh air after his tumultuous race, this is a great opportunity for Will Devonish to jump into 2nd position for the championship.
Well, you're absolutely right here. Let me have a look at the points deficit between Boak and Devonish. In actual fact, if Devonish, regardless, even if he wins this race, in actual fact, he only has to finish in 9th place. And look, there's only 9 cars remaining.
Yeah.
So, and then he would leapfrog. And Foley's had another moment down at turn 2 again, but he's only got to finish in 9th place, and he's going to leapfrog Phil Boak into P2 in the championship here. So this is not bad for Phil Boak. It's actually gotten worse. This is disastrous.
How quickly things can change here in the Automobilista Super 2 series.
Well, I must say, it's good that things go down to the wire in the last couple of weeks of a championship. I don't think I've actually seen... Well, actually, all of the streams and all of the series that I've been able to broadcast on, or been fortunate to broadcast on, have always gone down to the final race of the season, regardless whether it's Super 2, GT3, whatever we've done. And it's happened again, but then the drama that goes with it, you just don't expect some of these scripts to be written. It's like what happened with the final race of the World Endurance Championship, where the championship changed hands twice in the last 30 seconds, all by virtue of a car running out of fuel.
Well, it must be something about you, Nether.
I'm not saying that I attract the drama, but it's just interesting just to see that all these champions... We want things to be close. We want things to be good right up until the flag. We want people to fight right till the very end and make it interesting. But even so, just the storylines that go along with it is just incredible. And this is just something that we completely weren't expecting. Boat looked pretty comfortable, and he hadn't put a foot wrong until that very moment. And the one moment he puts the foot wrong, it's costly and it's terminal for him.
Yeah, and compare that to Brenton Foley, who's made the same mistake at turn 1 time after time after time and has managed to get away with it every single time. Maybe the stars are just shining on Foley tonight as we approach the end of lap 30. Whereabouts are we? 37 with Will Devonish.
Yeah, for the race leader.
Ahead of Mitch Hathaway.
It's unceremonial, I guess, now for Brenton Foley. He can pretty much do whatever he pleases. He can decide to retire the car. He can decide to finish the race. It really doesn't matter to him now because his teammates not finished this race, so it doesn't matter what happens after this point. He's champion regardless. I mean, he'll want to finish the race. As we said before, he'll want to win the race, but just judging by the pace and the lack thereof that he's shown tonight and the mistakes he's made, he won't be finishing on the podium unless there's an absolute catastrophe ahead of him. And actually, in fact, just looking behind, was that Will Devonish that's coming up to lap these guys?
No, that is Cam
That's
Rutledge.
Cam Rutledge.
This
Okay.
pair has just passed through turn 3 and 4. But on the other hand, I think not having the pressure of the championship now might just allow him to just race. He doesn't have to worry about the championship. It's already sewn up. He might just be able to just race and maybe put in a few better laps. So I don't think we've actually seen a good lap from Foley on stream tonight. We saw 2 shocking laps in qualifying, and we haven't seen any level of cleanliness from him this race so far, but we might be able to see that now, and he might actually, provided a mid to late race safety car or something along those lines, as Peter Savage just gives him a free kick by doing Foley off at turn 2. We could see Foley play himself back into it. It would require a few cars to go his way, but he might have the mindset required now.
No, I think you're right. I think he just needs... Foley, I think, just needs some clean air. I don't think he needs to battle with the cars around him. He just needs some clean air to keep it on the track and just bring it home. That's pretty much all that he can do at the moment. I was just having a look a bit further afield. Another one of the drivers that's been relatively clean tonight, no mistakes, no marks on the car, is the man in third place, Billy Dougal-Salonga, BDS as he's known to us and known to a number of other people. He's been driving very, very smoothly. He's not really worried too much about his teammate ahead and trying to catch his teammate, just wanting to run his own race. Third place would be a great return for the final race of the season if he can bring it home, and he's going the right way about that as we get well and truly past the half distance mark of this race now.
Yeah, it's been really impressive from both the HDS racing cars, actually, that they've managed to just be smooth and be consistent. And you look at those cars running, and like we've just seen this lap with Billy Dougal-Salonga, they haven't put a foot wrong. There's no oversteer, there's no understeer, there's no correction in the mid corner, there's no locked wheels or anything. It's just smooth time after time after time. It's like a metronome, and both of them have been outstanding in this race so far when we've seen championship protagonists encounter problems. So yeah, on a track that is, you know, very busy and very difficult, the two of them, Mitch Hathaway and Billy Dougal-Salonga, have done remarkably well.
Well, on top of that, where he is right now, he's third place, and look, he could even finish fourth if he needed to. That would actually be, both third or fourth would be enough to leapfrog him ahead of the non-finishing Dwayne Davies into P10 on the standings as well. So, and even if fourth place finish, he would be 9 points to the good ahead of D2. He wouldn't be able to catch Matt Williams, who is not here tonight, nor Brennan Ross, and they were locked in a battle for a 9-point battle. That was actually the closest battle out of everybody coming into tonight between 8th place Brennan Ross and 9th place Matt Williams, but no shows from both of those mean that they're going to stay precisely where they are, and they can't make any inroads into Steve Burko either.
So, what was it? 10th is the best spot for
BDS, correct. Yeah, 10th is the best that he can do tonight.
Regardless,
if he finishes third or fourth, he will be in 10th by the time the night is over. So that'd be a pretty good return for him, considering we haven't seen a lot of him this year. But
and what about Mitch Hathaway? Whereabouts is Hathaway in the standings at the moment?
So Hathaway is in behind Termo. So we're going to have a look at the moment with Hathaway finishing or currently P2 on the road, and then we take a look back to Termo, who is currently 9th. That would actually instigate a change of position for Hathaway by quite some considerable margin. He would be 45 points to the good, and that would move him up into P4. Even a third place or even a fourth place finish would be enough for Mitch Hathaway to get that job done if Termo was to finish 9th. What Termo actually needs, with Mitch Hathaway being where he is at the moment, is actually a 6th place finish, I believe, just doing the math. Actually, it's worse than that. He needs a 5th place finish to even stay ahead, and he's got it doesn't look like showing any signs of doing that right now. So Termo really needs a mistake from Mitch Hathaway to retain 4th, as mistakes just starting to creep in now for Will Devonish. A few lock brakes in the last couple of corners as well. In actual fact, put a little bit of outside tyre on the grass on the run up the hill to turn 6 there as well. And a lock brake again into 7. So smoke signals will be starting to give a bit of thought to Mitch Hathaway about how he tackles the next part of this race. Lewis Wedding believing that maybe watch out for a possible Mitch Hathaway undercut coming up again if he can get within striking distance of Devonish. Devonish's done it again. He's pinched the inside left front and gone wide and missed the apex at turn number 12. But still sets a lap time of 106.785. And actually, looking back to see Mitch Hathaway was 106.5. So a little bit of gain there for Mitch Hathaway.
It's just baby steps. They're in the mid part of the stint now. I think both of them came in on around lap 24, 25. So, you know, getting to the end on their tank of fuel and the end of their tyres. I think the important thing for Devonish is that in each instance, he's only just pinching that inside front tyre as he does it again at turn 4. So that's the unloaded tyre, the tyre that's not doing any work. So it's not nearly as drastic as pinching the outside one, which would probably send you off. So that's the tyre doing all the work in turning the car. So it's only just, as you said, smoke signals. It's nothing too disastrous yet for Devonish, and he's still maintaining the pace. In fact, I think Hathaway is probably a little better in the first part of the lap, up until about turn 9, and then Devonish is just a little more stable through that last part of the lap, and it's even with that wider run through turn 12. So it's just a bit of playing counterplay at the moment. The gap's not really stretching, but it's not really coming down, and Devonish answers with a 6.3 this time around versus a 6.5. Yeah, so that gap that Hathaway just got back, exactly. So it's, just settling in at the moment as they both come on to the rear of, I think that's Termo just ahead of the pair of them, and perhaps even Aaron Thomas rather had 3 goes at that one.
Yeah, and we are in the window where you can pit and get home from here quite comfortably. So we saw Brenton Foley got 29 laps. It's ironic you were talking about fuel and tyres, because if you did go for maybe a shorter fill, or you want to get out of some traffic and come in and take your stop, you can get home from here. So be warned. Let's just see if anybody takes the bait in the next lap or two. Will Devonish coming up to a little bit of lap traffic in Termo, but that's very well done by Termo. He gets out of the way. And
if I was Hathaway here, I'd come into the pits. This would be prime undercut right now. If he just comes into the pits now, and he's not going to do it, because it's only 22 laps out from the end, 23 laps. So you get onto that fresh tyre, you get 2 or 3 laps in the 6 flats, or maybe a 5.9, while Will's trying to process through traffic, and you make that gain. If I was in that car, I'd have made that pit stop. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, because it's looking like an opportunity lost for Hathaway the more and more this goes on.
I think you're possibly right there. I'm wondering whether or not he thinks he wants to try and get a little bit closer to Will before he tries and makes that undercut effective. There's only a lap difference in terms of the tyre age between these two. So Devonish came in first, followed by Hathaway a lap later.
Oh, Devonish has made a mistake.
He has too. What on earth has happened there? Let's just quickly see if we can pick that up before we get too far engrossed into this battle. Where did he make this mistake? There was a little bit of lap traffic ahead. Pinching the brake again into 4, up and over the hill at 5. Did he do a Steve Burko and potentially miss the turning point? No, he got sideways. The car jumped sideways and he carried too much speed, and that's a very, very lucky save for Will Devonish. That had the potential to be a massive aeroplane crash.
And if Hathaway wanted an invitation to get closer to the rear of Devonish to maybe affect that undercut a bit better, then he's got one now, and he's in fact right on the rear bumper through turn 2. So they're coming onto some lap traffic. That's Aaron Thomas just ahead of the road, down the road ahead of them. So this could complicate things further. And in fact, it's just ahead that we have Peter Savage and Brenton Foley as well. So coming onto a few cars now as they go through turn 3 and 4, now rising up the hill at 5 over the bridge. So this battle for the lead of the race, mind you, has really condensed, and Hathaway just runs a little wide out of the bridge.
Yeah, a little understeer moment.
Yeah, let Will off the hook just a little bit. And in fact, that's not just a little bit, that's quite a lot. That's half a second now that he's lost in that sequence of corners. So yeah, now I would definitely be thinking undercut. Undercut is the answer here.
Yeah, and that's a sentiment echoed by Lewis Wedding in the chat as well, that you're not going to get track position unless somebody makes a mistake. You've got to get track position with the undercut. So how does this work? Does Hathaway bite? No, he doesn't. He still stays with Devonish on this one. So
and now,
I think the opportunity is starting to vanish.
Yeah, that last sector was a very poor last sector in comparison to Will Devonish. It was 3/10 down, so he's not lost all of that advantage that he gained from Devonish's mistake, but it's certainly not nearly as clear cut as it was. I don't know why he's staying out. Maybe he thinks he can pressure Devonish into another mistake. Maybe he's waiting for a window to open up, but 50 seconds down the road, there is only one car in that entire section of the track. Every single car is in Sector 2 except for 6th place Steve Burko. So if he wants room to drop into, there's plenty of room there. I don't understand why he's not making this pit stop, and it's making me angry.
No, I'm getting a bit worried as well too about what his plans are. The only other thing that I can think of that he might be doing is he's seen Will make a mistake, and there it goes again. There's another pinch brake going into the final corner and wide off the apex. I'm wondering if he's waiting for Will to make another mistake to open up a door that he can just potentially just walk through, but he needed a mistake on the kind of magnitude that Will had a couple of laps ago coming over the bridge, and then the tail end of the car swapping ends on him. So he's got to be close enough to capitalise if Devonish does decide to make another one of those mistakes. And they are little mistakes, like even these little pinch brakes that he does here and there, they're little mistakes, and they'll all start to add up somewhere along the line. Like you'll pinch a brake, that tyre will rotate back to the point where the flat spot happens to be, and then it'll become worse.
Yeah, I guess. I think maybe the only thing, other thing I can think of is Hathaway has his race strategy already planned out and doesn't want to mess with, changing fuel times and all that sort of stuff. That's the only other thing I can think of, because there's just so much free space across the rest of the track. Because what's a more open door than a pit lane undercut?
No, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I was about to say, and I'm going to bring in some specialist comments here. We've got Lewis Wedding has jumped into the chat to have a chat to us. Good to have you aboard, Lewis. Talk to us about this undercut. You think it's time that Mitch Hathaway comes in?
Well, I was saying that about almost 10 laps ago. As we've seen, Will, in the last sort of 5 or 6 laps, his pace has dropped off. He hasn't been great through traffic, and he's made these little mistakes which have started to creep in and brought Mitch into play. And yeah, if Mitch pits early, it just has to be 1 lap. He just guns it on the out lap. We saw, obviously, last time out in the first round of pit stops that he was significantly faster, whether that be just the pit entry or just that out lap alone. He's got it in him. If he doesn't do it, though, I can't see him winning this race, because Will have decent tyres to the end. About 18, 16 laps to go. He'll have good tyres until the end.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And the fact is that Devonish pitted first on the last round of stops. Hathaway came in a lap later, but Hathaway had made a huge gain just by staying out for that 1 lap longer, just waiting for Will, and he was tucked right in behind him. Same thing that is happening right now. Will's been making had a gap, he'd made some mistakes, he'd come back, and in comes Will. Here we go. All right, so Will had locked it up actually on the pit lane entry, so now we will start to see how this plays out. Is Hathaway going to be able to do what he did last time around and stay ahead of Will after these second series of stops? Or are we going to see another one of those drag moments into turn 1 where Will manages to sneak up the inside?
So I'm just going to have a quick look at Will's previous lap times before he came in. So he was doing best lap in that previous sequence was a 6.2 with a 6.4 and 6.7 as well. So Hathaway needs to do better than that in this lap. His last lap around for Hathaway was a 6.6. So
I think he's picking up his pace. I'm watching him at the moment, got him just on screen here. He was very aggressive through turn 3, took a lot of curbs. So I get the impression he knows that this is the moment. He has to cover this off by being super, super aggressive, even on worn rubber. It's a bit of a dangerous game to play, though, Lewis.
Yeah, it is a dangerous game to play. Obviously, he's on worn tyres. They're almost in the late 20s now, and the rear tyres in particular, you don't want to lean on them too much.
He's going to go around again.
Well, I think he's going to have to hope now that Devonish has a little bit of lap traffic to deal with, because I can't see him, especially on the second lap once the tyres are up to temperature. Normally they're better on that second lap, not on the out lap. So I think we'll probably see Will set a very, very quick second lap here. And Hathaway's going to have to, this is going to have to be the lap of his life, I think, if he's going to want to emerge in front.
What did he set last time around, Michael? What was his last lap on the worn rubber on the flying lap?
So it was a 6.89 for Mitch Hathaway, whereas Devonish managed to drop out just ahead of
Peter Savage.
Yeah, so that worked out well for him. Hathaway, yeah, he's still going on it. So this first sector is a little better. It's in the 17s, which is better than the cars around him. But I'm just waiting for this middle sector time to compare him to what Will set. So Will had a track cut in the last sector, last lap around or something. So weird to see that happen, but Hathaway's middle sector is actually much better than Will's.
Might have been on the pit lane entry. And here comes HCS Racing number 31. He's in. Let's have a look at the pit entry. Beautiful pit entry, must be said. He didn't lock up the tyres at all. Got it stopped almost perfectly on the marks. It looked absolutely pristine. So maybe that's where he made that gain the last time around. Maybe it was all to do in the pit lane entry. Now, Billy Dougal-Salonga's coming in as well. Now, this could be a bit of trouble. Who else is in the lane there? Is that Foley? Yeah, that's Foley that's in the lane. He's the only PBF car that's remaining in this race, so he's not going to pose any threat. BDS is going to tour down the lane here. And there goes Termo. And BDS should, with a bit of luck, be okay
Hathaway's
to
on the
pull
move.
in. Yep, Hathaway's in the move. So that's worked out well for HDS Racing. Now, Will Devonish is on the move. He's out of the final corner now. And where is Mitch Hathaway in all of this? Touring down the
Just at
lane.
end.
He's
It's going to be close again.
It's
He's
the
not
same
gonna get
again.
it.
He's not going to get it. No, it's exactly the same as what happened last time, just a little bit more of a swing to Devonish this time around. And actual
the
fact,
reason
at least he
was-
comes out ahead of Pete Savage, so that's the important piece, but now he's got to put the blinkers on.
Yeah, Devonish on that last lap around, a 5.9, and that is why Devonish has that gap again out to 2 seconds. It's because on the outlap, and on the outlap he got a track cut for his last sector, cutting the final chicane just a little too much. But even still, a 14.9 last sector on that lap around, and that is why Devonish is going to take this race win, unless he makes a mistake. And honestly, Hathaway missed a trick there. Hathaway absolutely missed a trick, and Lewis Wedding was right. He should have come in 3, 4, 5 laps earlier, and he would have had the head of the race. So I'm disappointed in HDS Racing for that, but that's all right. They can lose the race. It's fine. It's fine.
Well, Lewis called it perfectly. He basically said that watch out for Will to come out and blitz the outlap, and obviously the lap after that, and he did just that. And look, he was pretty much right. The opportunity for Mitchell to undercut Will was 10 laps ago. Easily 10 laps ago. As soon as Will made that mistake where he came back to Mitchell, then the opportunity was then to get into the lane. He was in the pit stop window, get in, get it over and done with, and then just put in some nice laps on clean rubber, green rubber, and then he would have had the lead of this race.
And as it stands, he has a 2.7 second deficit to the leader of the race, and it is Billy Douglas-Longmer who comes out again in third. He's now almost 20 seconds away from the lead. In fact, just on 20 seconds away from the lead of the race. And then it is Brenton Foley who is a solid minute away from the lead of the race. So not quite the championship swan song Foley was after, but it'll be good enough for him.
He'll go a lap down before this race is over at this pace, and Devonish, I think, is coming up to the back of him very, very quickly too. Yeah,
just checking down, and Devonish 5.7 rather, to set a new fastest lap of the race. And he did this as well on the new tyres.
Foley's had another moment. Sorry to cut you off there, Floody. Foley had another moment. Big lock break into turn number 2. And I've got a funny feeling maybe Devonish behind may have done likewise. But Foley, he's had that trouble and down that turn all night long.
Yeah, so he's probably going to go a lap down. I'm just watching Will Devonish. You can see Foley in the tail of every shot now. So that's only about a 3 or 4 second gap between Devonish and the tail of Foley. I do want to just quickly make mention Hathaway set his fastest lap on the last lap around as well, a 5.9, so his first foray into the fives for Hathaway, and he's quicker again at the start of this lap. So we might see that gap just start to pinch down a little bit, but with how difficult passing is at Oran Park, I can't help thinking that Hathaway missed a trick there.
Yeah, 2 lap younger tyres is really not going to be a huge deficit here. So Devonish 5.957 that time, Randon a 5.971. So pretty much like for like lap times between Hathaway and Devonish. So he's going to have to find something special in the next 12 or 13 laps as Mitchell Hathaway to even have a remote shot at getting Devonish. You can see him there. You can see he's like a carrot. He can see the target. He can see precisely what he wants, but he's just not quite close enough to get it. It's like oh so close and yet so far.
Yeah, and on top of that as well, where Devonish is really good is that final sector, is that run out of turn 9, that flip-flop at 10-11, and that final corner. He loses a little time in the first sector, but it's basically like for like the amount of time he loses versus the amount of time Hathaway loses in that last sector. And where you want to be setting up that move at Oran Park is into turn 1 and 2. So with Devonish, even if Devonish does make a mistake and does get put under pressure, he's got the legs in that final sector to just pull away. And yeah, as I said to you earlier,
Foley
Foley
decides to fart the fastest lap. That's a bit of a surprise. I wasn't expecting that one to come up this late in the race. He's obviously had the last stop, and he's decided to just, I don't know, I get the impression now he's just having some fun with it. He knows the championship is his, and he's just going to try and steal the fastest lap away from Will here, I think. So he just wants to have that little bit of extra bragging rights.
What a dog.
Well, you said it, not me.
No, it's all good. I think that's a bit of banter, good fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to the lead battle. The long and the short of it is where Will needs to be quick, he is quick, and where Hathaway needs to be making up time, he's not. So as I said earlier, the most open door is a pit lane undercut. So it's a missed trick, and I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed. The strategy was there for the taking.
Yeah, Lewis, I think that's probably a sentiment echoed by yourself as well. The opportunity was there, he didn't take it. The end result is he's not leading this race.
Yeah, it's not the first time it's happened this season as well. I do believe I think there was Devonish at one point in one of the races earlier in the season where he was chasing. I think it was either in second or third place, trying to obviously chase down the cars in front of him. He had the opportunity there. It's almost like an open goal in hockey. They've pulled the goalie, but it seems like they just don't want to take the shot. So it's happened to a number of drivers this season, but I think next season we might see some drivers just take that punt and just go for it, because especially at this place, it is like a Monaco or a Hungary. Track position is everything. If Hathaway gets himself into the lead here, all he needs is 15 laps. He's just got to hold on for 15 laps, and it is notoriously hard to pass if you don't make a mistake here.
Well, we did see Cam Rutledge early in the piece with a couple of cars behind him as well, driving a superb defensive opening stint for about the first 10 or so laps until some of the mistakes came along and a few people got tangled up and that all busted that pack apart. But you're right, you can defend at a place like this. There's one line through a number of these corners. The only real spot where you can make a passing move is really down here into turn 1 and 2, and that's provided you're committed enough, as Devonish has a 5.498. So just snatching it back from Foley now, as we're watching Brenton Foley on screen with a massive lock up again into the turn that we were just mentioning, where probably there's the pristine passing opportunity. But you can pass here, but just only really into one spot unless someone else makes a mistake. Like where Foley and Devonish are right now, there's really only one line through a lot of these corners. You've got to be super committed. You've got to have someone that makes a mistake if you want to really have any shot of getting alongside. But as you said, Lewis, this is one of those circuits where track position pretty much rules the roost.
Yeah, you've really got to take advantage of obviously your track position. You could be a slower car around here, and it doesn't matter. But just going back to the passing opportunities, turn 1, it might seem like it's probably the biggest opportunity, or turn 1 and 2. But I actually think turn 3 is probably a bit easier. Obviously, you've got to have a willing partner into turn 1, and then at the same time, it's very, very easy, even on your own, just to outbrake yourself going into turn 1 and 2 and end off in the boonies like a number of drivers have already done. If you can just get that good run down the straight, stick close behind the car in front of you, and then just be better under braking for turn 2, you can set that driver up for turn 3, and then you've got a couple opportunities. You can stick it up the inside. If you box that off, you can set it up possibly for the corner after, and then just harry him for the rest of the lap if you don't get by.
Yeah, you just got to set yourself up out of the turn where Peter is right now. You've got to stay close, and you've got to set yourself up and just try and out-drag your opponent down to turn 3. You're right. There is a bit of a wide gap there, and that can, as long as you buy into the space that's there nice and early, you can command a little bit of track position and at least force your opponent to give you the space to make sure you have that run through the turn 3 right-hander, which then gives you position for 4, 5, and then 6 as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing a number of the drivers probably do have to sort of pick up on. Obviously, we do know the Foleys and even the Devonishes to some degree. They do have that ability to sort of place their cars when trying to make passing opportunities work, where they can just distract drivers or place them where they want, a corner or two in advance. And that's something I think Hathaway and BDS have probably got to pick up. But I think this season probably a really, really good learning season for them, and for them, obviously as a team, they're going to end pretty strongly. But I think Hathaway probably be a little bit disappointed that he's not going to be able to steal a win here right at the last round.
Well, if he's not disappointed, we're going to make him disappointed, because we're going to say, you could have won that race. Very good point you make there about thinking turns ahead and planning your moves, and that shows to me at least, Lewis, and I've seen you driving the GT3 World Challenge, that you're a real thinking driver and you're able to think about placing the car, because as you said, if you get the right exit out of 2, you can set up a car through 3 and 4 to really make that move. Just while you guys have been having that discussion, I've just been watching the timing screens. It's been kind of funny watching everyone just light up the timing screen. So in the last 3 or 4 laps, we've had Devonish, Hathaway, BDS, and Foley all set their best lap of the race, featuring, I think, a few 205s, and yeah, the hero time of 205.4 from Devonish as we
105.
are now.
105.
105.
205. It sounds like you're at Bathurst.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I was just saying. Yeah, the last race I commentated on was at Bathurst, I think. So that's where the 205s have been coming from. But yeah, the timing screen has been lit up for a little while. Now everyone's kind of settled into that rhythm, and Will's stretched out another second to that gap. So doesn't look like he's going to make another mistake for the rest of this race, as we've got only about 6.5 laps left.
Just put a little finger to my mouth and just said shh, because that's a dirty word. We don't do that in this commentary box. We don't like
Will
to
Devonish
give people
has it in the bag. In the bag.
Oh, there we go. So Lewis is now going out on a limb now and doing everything he can to jinx Will Devonish. So I'm sure Will will watch this back and just think, you idiot, why are you doing that to me? Why on earth do you want me not to win this thing? But he's got 6 laps to go. He's about to start lap 62 or 67. And the one distinction that I think he has, and that we haven't really seen levied against Brenton Foley this season, is Foley has now gone a lap down to the race leader. Who would have thought? That is
pretty big news.
Despite the fact the championship's in the bag, I don't think that's a notoriety that Brenton Foley would like to have. He's a front runner in Super 2 and has been for some time. He's a front runner in many of the categories, actually, it's fair to be said. But he would not have enjoyed having to get the blue flag to let the race leader go by. Not one bit.
No, I think
it's the first time for everything.
Luce?
I think he'd be a little bit frustrated. Obviously, before the race, he was speaking to us, and he wasn't quite happy with his setup around the circuit. And it showed, even though in practice he set some really quick lap times, he has gone off the road a number of times, obviously in the race and in practice, and even in qualifying where he wasn't able to set a very good lap time. So not a good round for him. It's almost very reminiscent to me, at least, of Schumacher in 2003 in the championship finale at Suzuka, where all he needed to do was achieve a point, and he did it in the most difficult and excruciating way possible by ripping his front wing off, running into his brother, and all other kinds of shenanigans. But he got the point and won the championship, and well, that's the case for Foley this evening.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
It ain't pretty. Yeah, it ain't pretty, but it works.
That's right. So it's like playing ugly, I think, is the way that they kind of call it, isn't it? You look at sports like AFL or rugby, where they know that they can actually, win by a lot more, but they make it very difficult, and they say we won, but we won ugly. Basically, this is Foley's definition of winning ugly. It's not. He'd prefer to be on the podium tonight.
He certainly would. And another thing that I guess just to sort of bring up is that obviously Devonish's form the last couple rounds has been very, very good. Obviously Bathurst, without his failure.
That's the blot on the copybook. That's the big blot on the copybook for him this year.
Yeah, obviously he was doing well at Adelaide, I believe. I think he was leading in that one and had some issues as well. So for him, it's almost like a what-if kind of season. His finish to the season has been strong. He was going to start the season very strong. But unfortunately for him, he's not going to win the championship. But at least he's going to put a lap on Brenton Foley. So that'll give him some small kind of, I guess, happy feeling and positive vibe at the end of the season. But I think it'll be, one of those what-ifs for him.
Yeah, he's just negotiated the last little bit of lap traffic, I think, that he needed to get past as well, which is good for him. So he's only got 4 laps to run, but Aaron Thomas was the last of the lap traffic that he needed to get past, and he's negotiated him safely out of turn 2. Foley's done the same. Aaron Thomas currently running 3 laps down, but still circulating, which is good to see. We'll quickly tick off the runners in this field with a couple of laps to go. So Devonish has pretty much led the majority of this race, save for the pit stops. Mitch Hathaway's had a stint at the front of the queue, but he hasn't been able to capitalise on the mistakes of Devonish and capitalise on the strategy when it was required. BDS, well, he's not been really in the thick of the fight, but he's gone about his business and gone about it quite well. He'll be pretty happy with 3rd place. I think he'll be most happy to stand on the podium. I'm sure he's looking forward to some podium interviews if he can stay there. Foley is the first of the cars a lap down, but, well, what could have been a good race for him, he's managed to scrap away and salvage a 4th place at the moment with his teammate falling off the road. Good result for Peter Savage as well. Up into P5s, up 1 from where he started, again, another driver that's been going along, minding their own business, just keeping themselves on the blacktop despite the lockups that he's exhibiting for us on screen at the moment. Steve Burko up 7 places from where he started, but of course a lot of that's also by virtue of the retirement factor. Aaron Thomas is still giving him a bit of a... Actually, he's a lap down, actually, Steve Burko. I was about to say giving him a hard time, but he is a lap down. And Cam Rutledge is on fire, so that's a DNF for Cam Rutledge. And actual fact, he's missing a front wheel as well.
He's just gone off. He's just gone off at turn 9, and we just missed it.
And then Turmo was the last one on a lap down. So that car's missing a wheel. That is not going to get repaired. That car will be in the lane. Suspension gone, bonnet gone, wheel gone. I thought the car was actually on fire in terms of the engine was on fire, but he's actually still trundling down the lane. So I think that's more sparks than it is flame. Obviously, we're too far back to take a look at what happened there, sadly, but that's a late talking point for Cam Rutledge. Now, he was fighting to stay ahead of Steve Burko, who's currently in 6th, and we plug that into our sheet with Rutledge in 8th, which potentially is going to become 9th. That is still not going to be enough for Steve Burko to overtake Cam Rutledge.
What about a DNF, which has just come through now?
Yeah, well, the DNF has come through. You're absolutely right. So we then plug that in as a DNF on our list for Cam Rutledge. And in actual fact, that is enough for a swing. So that is a swing of 66 points to the good for Steve Burko. And that is the Pro-Am Championship effectively decided. Steve Burko just needs to come home.
Wow. Late drama as we start the final lap for Will Devonish at the Oran Park circuit. Oof.
You got one CRE car on fire out in the lead, and one of them literally on fire in the pit lane.
Well, the fire's now been put out due to the DNF that's now just occurred, but that's not something you want to see that late in the race. That's something that Cam will probably be pretty upset about, having made a mistake such a long way into this race. That's part of the challenge of these longer formats though, Luce, isn't it? Just being able to concentrate we've been going for an hour and 15 minutes, so the base saved 2 hours. Not 2 hours, 80 minutes. You've got to be able to keep it together for the whole length of the race.
Yeah, and an hour and 15 around this circuit in particular, because you're so busy the whole time, it does not feel like an hour 15. It feels like 3 hours. So it is difficult to sort of keep your concentration. The corner, I think the left-hander just before the flip-flop, the barrier on the outside, that's where Aldo Benedetti retired. And I reckon, because that's where we caught up to Rutledge.
That's where Rutledge hit the wall as well, yeah, definitely.
Here we go.
Yeah.
2 wins to finish the season off. 3 wins in total for the season. Devonish will take this one out in an hour and 15 minutes and 50 seconds. So, hard-fought win in the end. Mitch Hathaway takes second place. Good result for HDS, and now just waiting on Billy Dougal-Salonga to cross the line and round out this podium. There he is. Great job. Good job to our podium sitters. But it's all about this man. Line locker burnouts happening down the main straight. Foley is your 2019 Super 2 Series champion. Back-to-back championships, 2018, 2019, and the number 1 will stay on the door for another season.
That is actually quite a good burnout from Foley there.
Very good.
To finish off the season for him. He was the first of the cars a lap down. Second of the cars lap down. 5th place overall was Peter Savage in the JB Hi-Fi racing car. Steve Burko came home in 6th place. Then it was Aaron Thomas who came home in 7th. Is he actually still on track?
He is in the process of finishing his final lap now, so he will complete this lap and then he will be across the line to finish this race. So he is actually the last of the classified finishers. We actually had 15 to start the race. Well, actually, in fact, 14 started the race because he's coming into the pit lane. As Jiminy Race Slick did not take the start of this race as Aaron Thomas sized down the pit lane.
Peter also started from the pit lane as well.
He did as well, so that's a fantastic drive from Peter to get all the way there. So a huge result for him. He's had a couple of good races in the last couple of weeks as well, having debuted that car out of the round at Sandown and has taken his first, his best finish, not his first podium, his best finish of the season. So, and some late finishes as well there too. Top finish for Mitch Hathaway and Billy Dougal-Salonga out of this race as well to finish out the year. We're just going to
And we
wait.
have
Sorry, Gon. We're just going to wait for the drivers to pop their way up here. And Michael, I'm going to leave you with the podium interviews here. I think we're just waiting on one more to arrive, but you can have at it with our race leader. Well, I think Mitch Hathaway. Actually, no, I was about to send Mitch Hathaway off to try and find his teammate, but he's here now. So the floor is yours, sir.
We've got the whole band here. We'll start off with the race winner, Will Devonish. Congratulations, 2 race wins in a row to round out the season, and you take second place in the championship. Take us through the race from your perspective.
Ah, what a ripper of a race. Hathaway just pushing me the whole time, so uh, haven't enjoyed a win like that for a long time, and it was a great way to finish this season. And really happy that we, myself and CRO, you could pick up the second place in the championship.
Yeah, congratulations on that. You looked untouchable throughout most of the evening. You said the fastest lap in qualifying and very smooth during the race. You had one or two little moments there though. Can you take us through that moment just coming out of the bridge, which brought Hathaway right onto your bumper? It was quite a bit of a swapper you had going there.
Yeah, dropped the rear tire in the grass, and I know if I pitched it in, it would just spin me around, so I decided to just let it go straight. And yeah, try to get it back on track as soon as possible. And I think Hathaway's eyes would have widened quite a bit at that point, but yeah, able to hold on to it. So.
Yeah, you finished up second in the season with 2 race wins to your name to round out the season, and another one earlier in the season, if correctly. What was your moment of the season for you and your car?
It was either that qualifying lap at Bathurst or last week at Sandown. I love Sandown, and all year I wanted to come back and win there, so I was really happy with that victory.
Good job. Well, congratulations on your win this evening, Will Devonish.
Thank you.
Second place tonight was Mitch Hathaway. Mitch, a very consistent race from you. I don't think you made any mistake, and a great run from both you and your HCS teammate tonight. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very promising. That's how we wanted to finish the season, is on a high, and Billy did awesome tonight. But yeah, I was just very consistent. I think I was lapping around the 6s the whole time. It's good to be up thereabouts, but with Devonish, but he kind of stole the show tonight. A couple of incidents which brought me on the back of him, but he just took off again. So mad props to Devonish, and great effort from Billy tonight to get on the podium. Also qualified really well as well. So yeah, awesome night, and can't wait to get back into it next season.
Yeah, you both of you had outstanding nights. I just want to pose a question to you. That last pit stop, all of us in the commentary booth were talking about you maybe trying to do an undercut there. Why didn't you make that decision?
No, I was supposed to come in the lap after Devonish, but I didn't send the pit crew out, so I kind of had to wait an extra lap, and knew it was going to push me a big gap behind Devonish. So, oh well, something you can learn from, and yeah, it is what it is.
Fair enough. So I think you end up the series in 4th place, if the maths was correct.
Correct.
Can you please? Yep, no, 4th place. So a great season from yourself. What was your highlight of the season?
It would have to be Adelaide, definitely.
I would echo
coming
that.
out like that. Yeah, had no idea what to expect, obviously, first race in the category, so coming out there and pretty much being perfect from the word go was yeah, massive highlight. And now looking back and onto that moment, it's something I can cherish for a long time. Obviously just the one win this season, but a lot of podiums, so yeah, it was awesome rookie year for me, so look forward to improving on it next year.
Fantastic. We can't wait to have you back for next year. Congratulations on your 2nd place tonight.
Thank you very much.
And finally, 3rd place this evening was Billy Dougal-Salonga. Billy, BDS, great race from you. Another really consistent race. A bit quiet from your end though. Take us through the race from your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Pretty quiet race, I reckon. I was by myself most of the time. Mitch and the other boys were just fucking way too far in front. And I think I had pretty good pace, pretty consistent, but yeah, a bit lonely out there.
Well, it's better to be lonely in a podium position. I think that's your first podium of the season, is it not?
Yeah, I'm so stoked. I'm lost for words, to be honest.
Fantastic. So yeah, first podium of the season. You and your HDS teammate were pretty consistent for the entire evening. Unfortunately, we didn't give you a lot of screen time because you were so far out ahead, the opening trio. Yeah. So what was your highlight of the season as we come to a close?
Highlight. Probably this race is the best I've done so far. So yeah.
If you had
Just
said
been
if you had
trying to
said
practice
coming
as hard as
together
I can.
if you had said coming together at Phillip Island, I would have shot you because that was probably the low light. You two coming together.
I think I've had a few lowlights in this tournament, but finally all the practice has paid off. So doing well. Thank you, Mitchie, for helping me get to this point. Yeah, that's all I got to say, really.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations to your third place, double podium for HDS Racing. So congratulations both to you, and congratulations again to Will on the win. But we also have this, as this is the last round of the championship, we also have to award the championship to the championship winner, and it is Brenton Foley going back to back. Brenton, congratulations on a fantastic year. Take us through tonight's race from the seat of your car.
Looking back at it, probably a little bit disappointed in myself for tonight, especially when I ended up getting lapped and I worked out that when I was driving how I probably should have, I somewhat had the pace, probably not of Will, but of a podium car. But yeah, I was driving too much in my head, being too conservative, trying to finish and braking a little bit early into turn one. And as soon as I started doing that, the mistakes crept in, and then as soon as it was extremely unlucky that my teammate Phil DNF'd and unfortunately he's lost second in the championship. But for me, as soon as that kind of happened, I realised I couldn't lose it from there, and the lap times came out again. But yeah, so overall, tonight wasn't that great, but very happy to finish the race and wrap up the year and win the championship.
Yeah, I was one thing that we had mentioned on the stream earlier was your consistency in results. So even with a bad night for yourself, finishing fourth might not be as far up the grid as you would have liked, but still it's a very good result to cap off the championship season.
Yeah, still really happy with fourth, especially at a track that I found probably for me it was the hardest track of the whole season. I just struggled to kind of be comfortable and confident in the car the whole time and stay consistent. But overall, if it's a track that I'm not comfortable with, I'll take a fourth any day.
Yeah, so winning Super 2 for the second year in succession, you're in the championship hunt for the TCR Championship and GT3 World Challenge as well. So what's next for Brenton Foley?
ARW? I don't know if that'll happen anytime soon, but personally, V8s is why I got into sim racing and motorsport in general. So this one kind of trumps any other championship that I've won or contested, and I was really, really happy to win this one.
Fantastic. So we'll see you back again next year for Super 2?
Definitely.
Awesome. Cannot wait. Nether, I believe that's back to you.
Thanks, Michael. It is indeed back to me, and we're going to have a quick look at the final points, subject to any of the overhanging penalties that may come up as a result of this. So this is where the championship stands after it's all said and done. So there it is on corrected list there. Brenton Foley, the 10 wins for the season. So he wins his second consecutive Super 2 Series championship. A change of position, Devonish and Phil Boak, they swap places by virtue of Devonish's win and Phil Boak's unfortunate DNF. And then Mitch Hathaway, P4 in the standings. Now, Termo has managed to hang on to P5, so that was a swap of position there between Hathaway and Termo at the end of the day. That all got done and dusted. And Cam Rutledge has unfortunately lost out to Steve Burko as a result of his late DNF as well. So that means that Burko is 66 points to the good of Cam Rutledge. So that would happened only in the last few laps from home. So Cam, as we said on the stream, be pretty disappointed with that. Matt Williams, Brennan Ross, those two guys didn't contest the final race tonight. BDS moves up a spot ahead of Dwayne Davies, who didn't finish the race tonight either. And Josh Ben, despite not being here tonight, he finishes inside the top 12 on your graphic there as well. So a couple of late changes in the overall points classification. Foley, the winner in Pro, and then Steve Burko taking out Pro-Am. While we're finishing up tonight, I believe Brenton Foley would like an opportunity to say a few words. So we'll hand over to Mr. Foley for some closing comments on Super 2.
I'll try and get through these as quickly as possible because I have a few people to thank. Firstly, Nether and the production team, which included Floody tonight, Hans and Rhodey at some times. They put amazing effort into the streams and doing that for us every single week that we race so everyone can watch it back. Nether as well, specifically for making the top 10 shootout at Bathurst a reality and doing all of that, and as well as being our DSO as an impartial adjudicator when specific penalties needed to be handed out. Phil Boak, my teammate, also ran the series with me. He made all the mod packs, ran the calendar, helped with stewards, discussing with drivers for the 2020 development, and he's added for being super effing rad. Matt Williams and Dwayne Davies. Matt ran pretty much all the servers in the first 3 quarters or more of the season, and it wouldn't have been possible without him. Dwayne also doing server hosting. The series wouldn't have happened without them, as we wouldn't have had servers up for us to race. So a lot of thanks to those guys. Brennan Ross also helped with server fixes when required. Will Devonish put up practice servers every single week, which enthused a lot of drivers and got a lot of practice in and pretty much improved the quality of driving throughout the whole season. If you watch the first round compared to the last round, the quality was just a massive improvement, as well as his coaching videos throughout the season. And obviously I have to thank every driver rocking up week in, week out, and making great liveries to make our grid look really good. I think that's it. I got through everyone.
No, well said, mate, and much appreciated the kind words for myself, and not only to that, but all the guys that have contributed, no matter what way, shape or form across the season, whether you're an admin, whether you're a driver, whether you're a broadcaster. I'm sure Michael will probably echo the same sentiments. Been a great ride, and the ride will only continue next year.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to helping run it again, and the development for the changes for next season.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it at that. Michael, been great to have you aboard for a couple of times this year, for the times you've been able to fill in, and hopefully we look forward to seeing a little bit more of you next year.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to fill in around with a series that I love very much, V8 Supercars, and around some tracks that I love quite a lot as well. So yeah, thank you very much for inviting me along.
No, not a problem. And as a closing remark, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody that's tuned in over the course of the year and watched on the live stream, whether you've watched that live, whether you've watched it back. There's some things that have happened to me in the last 12 months that have been a huge positive. This year has sort of been a breakout year for me, not just in terms of doing online streaming, but some of the other things that I've been doing in the real world. And it all stemmed from this. It all stemmed from doing the broadcasting 18 or so months ago with Stairs and the guys from ARW when we first picked up the mic here. For me personally, it's led into some associations that I've developed with Improved Production, Formula V, Phillip Island Auto Racing Club this year, to the point where I've been involved in working on live streams and broadcasting out to Australia nationally for actual proper sanctioned live motor events, to some of the work that I've been doing even just recently in the last couple of months with working with Pete Lyons from RevHeads Review, and even to the point where I'd even wrote a piece for Auto Action for Island Magic the weekend just gone as well. So even to the point as well, I've even actually appeared in pit lane in the last week or so as well. So it's been a hell of a ride. I've got all of you drivers, admins, people tuning into the stream, all your comments, all your feedback as support, and I can't wait to get stuck into Super 2 again next year. But there's still a couple of different streams to go. There's still a couple of other races yet to finish in AMSLs, and if you want to have a race, come along and have a race. We'd love to see you at some point. We'll see you on Sunday for GT3 World Challenge, but until next time, please drive safely. Bye for now.